Chapter 795. Under everyone's gaze, the patient slowly walked out of the room. When she stood at the door, the whole room was silent. It was so quiet that even the sound of a pin dropping could be heard. Almost everyone was looking at the woman. She was a 20-year-old woman. Her skin was fair and rosy, and her hands were as white as cream. Was this really the patient? Everyone was nervous. They hoped for a miracle, but they couldn't believe it. Suddenly, Patriarch Hua asked in exasperation, "Patriarch Ren, is this the patient?" Patriarch Ren quickly took out the previous portrait and showed it to everyone. After a comparison, everything became clear. This woman with fair skin was the patient. She was the woman whose skin was wrinkled like a 70 or 80-year-old woman. Patriarch Hua unconsciously took a few steps back. He looked at Gu Beiyue, who was walking out of the door. He couldn't believe it, and he didn't want to believe it. Ha ha ha. Gu suddenly raised his head and laughed wildly. "Gu Beiyue, you're good. This young master likes you." His hearty laughter resounded throughout the courtyard. Everyone came back to their senses and praised him. They didn't seem to have doubted and ridiculed him before. Gu Beiyue, oh Gu Beiyue, he was simply a miracle. With just a few words, he cured 10 years of amnesia. Now, with a simple prescription, he cured the strange disease of premature aging. If he wasn't a miracle, what was he? Not to mention the 3 department heads, even in the history of the medical college, no one had ever created such a miracle. No medical team had ever created such a record. This man was far better than the previous deans of the medical college. His medical skills were definitely not 5th grade. Amidst the praises, Tang Li shouted, "Dr. Gu's medical skills have probably surpassed 7th grade. In my opinion, he should be evaluated as an 8th grade medical genius." As soon as he said this, everyone immediately agreed. He must be 8th grade. Even Gu Yuntian may not have Dr. Gu's ability, right? What kind of difficult disease is it? It's nothing for our Dr. Gu. When Dr. Gu was evaluated as a 5th grade divine doctor, he wasn't even 16 years old, right? It's Medical City's honor to have Dr. Gu back. Gradually, the praise turned into flattery. Gu Beiyue was in the crowd, but he did not seem to hear the voices around him. He was whispering to the patient as if he was explaining something. Disguised as the imperial physician of Northern Li, Bai Yanqing, who was sitting in the front row, kept staring at Gu Beiyue. His narrowed eyelids and deep eyes were not malicious. "Master, where did this guy come from?" Bai Yuqiao asked in a low voice. Bai Yanqing snorted coldly and said nothing. At this moment, Department Head Ouyang asked, "Family Head Ren, has the medical skills competition ended?" No matter how many people supported him in the medical school, if he couldn't convince the 3 department heads and win the medical skills competition and become the director, it would be useless no matter how good his medical skills were. After all, the medical school wasn't a place where power was the only thing that mattered. Otherwise, there wouldn't be 2 sets of standards for medical grades and administrative ranks in the medical school. Once again, Patriarch Ren felt pity. He secretly sighed in his heart. "Gu Beiyue, oh Gu Beiyue, you look low-key, but why are you so arrogant when you speak? Isn't this a trap for yourself?" "Patriarch Ren, what does Dr. Gu mean by finish?" Department Head Huo also spoke up. Patriarch Ren wanted to be biased, but he couldn't help. He could only question Gu Beiyue as the head of the judging panel. "Dr. Gu, it's been 3 days. Shouldn't you give everyone an explanation?" Everyone was nervous and worried for Gu Beiyue. He was still whispering to the female patient with a serious and cautious expression. He didn't care about the 3rd case at all. Han Yunxi stood beside him. Instead of being nervous, she was more expectant. If it were Gu today, she would have been worried. But since it was Gu Beiyue, she was 100% at ease. She pondered how Gu Beiyue would treat the third patient. She had seen a similar case in modern times called congenital glycosylation disorder type 2. Because the patient couldn't swallow, they couldn't drink water. The illness started in infancy and there was no effective treatment. They had to rely on a feeding tube inserted in the stomach 3 to 4 times a day to get high-calorie food into the stomach. Although Han Yunxi knew about this case, she didn't know the exact cause of the illness, let alone how to treat it. How could this illness be treated in a 50-year-old man? It would be very difficult to even keep him alive. In any case, Han Yunxi couldn't come up with a solution even if she racked her brains. Therefore, she was very much looking forward to Gu Beiyue's solution. Gu Beiyue's delay finally angered Department Head Hua. He reprimanded, "Gu Beiyue, the patient doesn't have much time left. You're wasting his life like this." Old man thought that Dr. Gu would choose the one with no ability to eat first out of the 3 cases. I never thought he'd put him last. No matter how brilliant his medical skills are, he's no better than a normal doctor if he can't distinguish between priority and urgency, Bai Yanqing spoke up as well. There's no need to say anything more. Gu Beiyue promised himself that he'd finish looking at all 3 cases in a day, but he's already broken his promise. As I see it, the medical academy should expel him from Medical City immediately. The Tianing officer sneered. Unfortunately, Gu Beiyue wasn't in a rush. He tactfully declined the female patient's thanks before leisurely walking towards the crowd. Even in the face of the 3 overbearing department heads and the ill-intentioned Bai Yanqing and the Tianing officer, he maintained his composure and smiled faintly. This one can answer all of your questions, but I ask that you all wait a moment. Wait for what? Department Head Hua's tone was fierce. Those who knew him well had never seen him so irritable before. Unfortunately, he couldn't influence Gu Beiyue. Wait for the patient's good news. Gu Beiyue not only maintained his smile, it even seemed to contain traces of ridicule. He didn't know how others saw it, but the more he looked, the more he felt that Gu Beiyue was mocking him and looking down on him. Department Head Hua didn't understand. The patient's life was hanging by a thread right now. How could there be good news if no one was treating him? Just as Department Head Hua was about to explode, a cry of pleasant surprise came from outside the courtyard. Department Head Hua! Department Head Hua, the patient's recovered. The patient can drink water now, and he said he wants to eat. Hurry and go take a look. Everyone present turned to look at the same time, consciously opening up a path for the medical assistant to run in. The young medical assistant was extremely excited. He ran while shouting, "Department Head Hua, a miracle has happened. This is simply a miracle. The patient's recovered. He's cured himself." The young medical assistant stopped in front of Department Head Hua, panting for breath. When he saw the man's stony face, he realized that something was wrong with the atmosphere in the courtyard. He glanced around timidly and found that everyone else was just like Department Head Hua. They were all motionless and had stiff expressions. The young medical assistant began to panic before bursting into tears. "I'm not lying. The patient's really cured himself. If you don't believe me, go take a look for yourself." Sob, I'm not lying. It was truly too quiet, so quiet that the young medical assistant was afraid. He had no idea what had just happened, much less what Gu Beiyue had said. In the silence, Gu Beiyue gently patted the young medical assistant's head. "I believe you. He's been hungry for so many days, so he can't eat too much. This is the menu I wrote. Take it and tell the caretaker to eat according to the menu for 3 days. After that, the patient can leave at any time." The young medical assistant was bewildered. Just as he was about to take the menu, Department Head Hua snatched it away and saw that it really was a menu. When did you write it? Department head Ho questioned. 3 days ago. I wrote it in my room. Gu Beiwe answered truthfully. He looked at House Head Ren and explained, House Head Ren, this one said that he finished reading 3 cases in a day, not that he was cured. The first 2 cases were read within a day, followed by diagnosis and treatment. The third case's illness didn't need further treatment. He either died without treatment or recovered without treatment. Now it seems that the patient belongs to the latter. House Head Ren was still in a daze when Department Head Ho exploded. Impossible. Old man won't believe it. He rushed out and ran towards the third courtyard. For a moment, everyone followed suit. Chapter 796. Even Chu Shifeng and Su Donglin couldn't resist their curiosity and followed the crowd to see the third patient. Once again, only Han Yunxi, Gu, and Gu Beiwe were left. Han Yunxi and Gu stood on the left and right respectively, both staring at Gu Beiwe in silence. Gu Beiwe had been calm and collected before, but their stares made him feel awkward. He coughed lightly and asked, You guys, what are you doing? Gu Beiwe, TSK. Gu rubbed his chin with amusement as he clicked his tongue. You. Han Yunxi crossed her arms in front of her chest, lost in thought as she kept muttering, you. Gu Beiwe couldn't help but laugh. Unlike his polite and modest smile before, he was chuckling happily. The battle at Medical City was over. Yes, it was over. Gu suddenly grabbed Gu Beiwe by the shoulder. Brother, let's go. Let's go show off. By the time the 3 of them reached the third courtyard, everyone automatically parted to let them through. The 3 department heads and the panel of judges were emerging from their rooms. They'd already confirmed that the patient had recovered without treatment. Self-recovery wasn't rare. Many illnesses could be cured within a certain amount of time. But who would have thought that such a strange and dangerous illness could be cured? In any case, Department Head Ho never expected it. He hung his head, his annoyance written all over his face. If he hadn't agreed to Gu Beiwe's previous demands and insisted on treating this patient, then he would have been the one to take advantage of the situation. He would have had a chance. Even if he couldn't compare to Gu Beiwe, he could at least suppress the other 2 department heads. Department Head Ho wanted to bang his head against the wall. Han Yunxi and Gu walked behind Gu Beiwe as they passed through the crowd. Everyone's attention was on Gu Beiwe. Their gazes were no longer scornful or mocking, but filled with amazement, adoration, astonishment, and admiration. If there were still people who envied Gu Beiwe before, there was no such thing now. All that was left was admiration. This man's brilliant, and peerless medical skills had reached a level that no one could envy. They could only look up to him in admiration. Even the 3 department heads had no more complaints. Even Department Head Ho had to admit that Gu Beiwe hadn't hit the jackpot by accident or luck to pick up the third patient. Gu Beiwe had only described the symptoms in a few sentences before determining that the patient could recover. This was true skill. Han Yunxi and Gu's footsteps. Han Yunxi couldn't help but smile wryly. Why hadn't she expected this result? Eating disorders could be the congenital disease she'd seen, but it could also be the somatization of a psychological illness. The term somatization disorder was used to describe physical abnormalities caused by psychological factors. It could take a long time to recover, or it could recover under certain stimuli. Gu Beiwe's diagnosis was completely correct. Regardless of whether it was a congenital disease or a somatization disorder, based on the specific circumstances of this case, the patient would either die or recover by themselves. When the patient's life was in danger due to hunger, perhaps this would stimulate them to recover by themselves. Han Yunxi also felt absolute admiration for Gu Beiyue. Gu Beiyue walked forward alone. The entire medical academy and all the distinguished guests of the Apricot Woods Conference had taken the initiative to give up this path to Gu Beiyue. It belonged to Gu Beiyue alone. Gu Beiyue walked step by step toward the panel of judges under the gazes of reverence and sincerity. Even under such glory, his footsteps were still calm, and his smile was still as carefree as ever. Dressed in white, he was elegant, modest, gentle, and unperturbed by honor and disgrace. This was a true doctor. The highest realm of the medical skills competition wasn't the self-recovery he'd shown today. It was that regardless of whether the patient was mentally ill or physically ill, as long as they saw him, they would be able to feel at ease and not fear death. Dr. Gu, could you explain the diagnosis and treatment of these 3 cases in detail? Clan Headren asked respectfully. Gu Beiyue agreed and thoroughly analyzed the 3 cases. Everyone listened attentively. Even the 3 department heads were very attentive, afraid of missing any details. After the explanation, the medical skills competition finally came to an end. Our group announces that Gu Beiyue is the winner of this medical skills competition. According to the rules of the Apricot Woods Medical Skills Competition, the new dean of the Medical Academy will be Gu Beiyue. Clan Headren announced happily. From a certain perspective, these words determined the future of Medical City. Clan Headren presented the Medical City token he'd prepared to Gu Beiyue with both hands. Gu Beiyue turned back to smile at Han Yunxi and Gu before accepting the token without hesitation. He glanced at it before raising it up high. His gentle gaze suddenly turned serious, and he didn't smile at all. Such seriousness made everyone's hearts skip a beat, and they unconsciously followed his lead. This seriousness was the reverence and devotion of a doctor to life. There was no room for prevarication or ambiguity. Such seriousness made this sickly and weak man seem like a supreme deity. From now on, he would rule over Cloud Realm's medical world. Among the 7 noble families, the Shadow Clan's shadow arts were known throughout the world. It wasn't a secret, but their medical skills were a secret. Like a shadow, they protected Western Qin's imperial family. At the same time, the Shadow Clan also shouldered the responsibility of personal imperial physicians. The Shadow Clan's ancestors had deep ties with the medical academy. However, he wasn't clear on these matters, nor did he have any way of knowing. He'd received several sets of medical skills from his grandfather and studied hard since childhood to reach his current level. He'd always kept a low profile and didn't compete. He'd never imagined that there would be a day when he'd hold up the Medical City token. Could this be considered as a form of protection? Han Yunxi, from now on, Gu Beiyue, promised that no one in Cloud Realm's medical world will dare to make you an enemy. Gu Beiyue's cold and solemn eyes looked down at the entire medical academy. In an instant, everyone present, from the vice head to the young medical apprentices, all knelt down and kowtowed. Han Yunxi looked at Gu Beiyue and couldn't help but frown. Why? Why could she see the warmth in his eyes when he was so serious? Why did she feel like he was looking at her when he was clearly looking down at all the medical academy's doctors? In the crowd, Bai Yanqing's eyes shone with absolute killing intent, but no one noticed. The miracle of the medical skills competition quickly spread throughout Medical City. Overnight, the 3 words Gu Beiyue became a legend in Medical City and Cloud Realm. The next day, Gu Beiyue officially took the position of head of the Medical Academy. Because of his involvement, the tripartite balance of power between the 3 departments in Medical City instantly collapsed. Whether it was individuals or families, everyone was eager to curry favor with Gu Beiyue. Unfortunately, they'd all underestimated Gu Beiyue's management skills. After he took office, he immediately did one thing. He held a meeting on the dystocia case and made acupuncture painless treatment the focus of obstetrics. He requested that it be promoted in the next few years and included the diagnosis and treatment of amniotic fluid embolism as a model in the book. After that, he promoted 4th young Miss Wren and gave her 2 promotions to become a 6th-rank primogenitor doctor, making an exception and appointing her as a director. In this way, he'd roped in House Head Wren. One had to know that although the Wren family wasn't as powerful as the older families, they didn't have such complicated relationships within the medical academy. As long as Gu Beiyue had the heart to promote them, the Wren family would be absolutely loyal to him. Gu Beiyue only needed to promote the Wren family, and all the small and new families in medical cities saw hope and took the initiative to seek refuge. This was the beginning of Gu Beiyue's suppression of the older families and the dissolution of the complicated relationships within the medical academy over the years. If 4th young Miss Wren was promoted as an exception, then what about Han Yunxi? Han Yunxi was the greatest contributor to the emergency treatment. Gu Beiyue gave all the credit for the amniotic fluid embolism to Han Yunxi and gave her special permission to promote Han Yunxi to a 7th-rank primogenitor doctor and become a member of the Council of Elders. This promotion was indeed a bit excessive, but 4th young Miss Wren was the first to make an exception, followed by Han Yunxi. Han Yunxi's contributions were even greater than 4th young Miss Wren's, so the Wren family and other families couldn't object to such an appointment. Those who objected were quickly refuted by the Wren family. Gu Beiyue didn't even need to personally argue. When Han Yunxi received this news, she finally understood why Gu Beiyue had pulled 4th young Miss Wren out of the blue. Using the opportunity of appointing a new director and the results of the Apricot Woods Conference's medical competition as a reference, Gu Beiyue also promoted many of his own people. Because of Luo Zuishan's performance at the Apricot Woods Conference and Gu Beiyue's favoritism, he was smoothly promoted from director to the Council of Elders. 3rd Elder Shen was promoted to vice director and was on equal footing with the other 3 vice directors. On the day that 3rd Elder Shen Jueming, took office, Gu exposed Vice Director Lin's and Lady Lianqin's shady dealings. Vice Director Lin was imprisoned, and Vice Director Ouyang and Vice Director Hua began their days of living in fear and trepidation. If you don't have a guilty conscience, you won't be afraid of ghosts knocking on your door. They were trembling in fear because they had a guilty conscience. Gu didn't touch them, so they didn't dare make things difficult for Gu Beiyue in the future. Gu Beiyue only used 3 days to complete the transfer of personnel. It was almost a complete reshuffle of the medical academy, causing all of Medical City to sigh and all of Cloud Realm Continent to tremble. The representatives of all the major powers in Cloud Realm Continent were paying close attention, and so were their masters. Ning Cheng was almost at Medical City when he received the news. He stared blankly for a moment, hesitating whether to turn back or continue forward. Long Fei Yi was just about to meet up with Bailey Yuanlong when he received the news. "Congratulations, Your Highness." "Congratulations, Your Highness." Bailey Yuanlong congratulated him as soon as he arrived. Although he didn't know Gu Beiyue's true identity, he knew that Gu Beiyue taking over Medical City was equivalent to His Highness Duke of Qin and esteemed Wang Fei taking over Medical City. Long Fei Ye's happiness was written all over his face. It was rare for him to laugh so heartily in the army. Beautifully done. Han Yunxi should be back in a few more days. This prince will wait for her. Bailey Mingxiang recalled the words His Highness had said to the Shadow Guard and couldn't help but ask in a low voice, "Your Highness, Dr. Gu, isn't coming back together?" Chapter 797. On the way back, Long Fei Yi was whispering to the Shadow Guard he'd sent to Medical City. Bailey Mingxiang accidentally overheard 3 words, "After the medical competition, get rid of him," and "Gu Beiyue." These 3 words formed a frightening sentence. After the medical competition, get rid of Gu Beiyue. Bailey Mingxiang was an astute person. She had always kept her relationships and priorities close to her heart. She was very clear on what to say and what not to say. If it was any other matter, she would have acted like she didn't know anything. But this time, it involved Gu Beiyue. She only knew that His Highness Duke of Qin and Gu Beiyue were working together in secret, and that he was hiding it from esteemed Wang Fei. But just like everyone by His Highness Duke of Qin's side, she knew nothing of Gu Beiyue's background. She was truly afraid that His Highness Duke of Qin and Gu Beiyue were working together to take what they needed and use each other. If that was the case, His Highness Duke of Qin would use Gu Beiyue to take over Medical City. Given his vicious and merciless personality, he would definitely get rid of Gu Beiyue without hesitation. This time, Medicine City's Wang clan and the Council of Elders' attitudes towards the poison sect were enough to explain everything. It was best to keep such an important faction in one's own hands. Moreover, when Elder Kenzo had taught her martial arts, he'd mentioned Gu Beiyue's injuries. Elder Kenzo had said that Gu Beiyue's physique was the kind of person who would fight to rise from the brink of death. Once he recovered, it was very likely that his martial arts would surpass His Highness Duke of Qin's. These two men were both extraordinary. They were both very complicated and very terrifying. Bailey Mingxiang was afraid that esteemed Wang Fei would be hurt. Esteemed Wang Fei and Gu Beiyue were less intimate than lovers, but more than good friends. If His Highness hid it from the Princess Consort and got rid of Gu Beiyue, what would the Princess Consort think? If there was a day when the Princess Consort found out that Gu Beiyue had also deceived her, how would she feel? Bailey Mingxiang was full of doubts and worries. Unfortunately, Long Fei Yi did not answer her. She did not know if he did not hear her or if he heard her and ignored her. In any case, he was already chatting with Bailey Yuanlong as they walked toward the barracks. Bailey Mingxiang was about to chase after her when the shadow guard, Ah Dong, hurriedly stopped her. Miss Mingxiang, His Highness doesn't like talkative servants. Only then did Bailey Mingxiang come to her senses. She sighed softly. Thank you, I understand. When Long Fei Yi arrived at the barracks, Bailey Yuanlong had already summoned the strategists and deputy generals. These important positions were all filled by mermaids. Because His Highness Duke of Qin had come in person, everyone was overflowing with excitement. They were anxious to express their loyalty, but didn't dare to be rude. Long Fei Yi was dressed in black and sat down on a large tigerskin chair. He didn't look out of place at all, and on the contrary, he looked even more imposing. His innate kingly aura made him look like a ruler no matter what he wore or where he was. A cold glance was enough to look down on the world. Everyone excitedly waited for him to speak, but he didn't say anything. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly as he personally brewed tea, leisurely pouring 10 or so cups. Only then did he smile. This prince will use tea in place of wine to toast everyone. You won't mind, will you? The Duke of Qin loved tea and disliked wine. This was a secret that everyone knew. However, everyone present was stunned. Some were suspicious, some were fearful, and some were even uneasy. They all looked at Bailey Yuanlong. His Highness Duke of Qin had personally brewed tea for them and was speaking so politely. What was going on? Was he dissatisfied with them and wanted to dismiss them? General Bailey had said that this time, His Highness Duke of Qin would personally take command and lead everyone all the way to Northernly. That was why everyone had been so excited that they couldn't sleep. They had been counting down the days until His Highness Duke of Qin would come in person. His Highness Duke of Qin's attitude today, could it be that something unexpected had happened? But when they thought about it, something didn't seem right. If something unexpected had happened, His Highness Duke of Qin wouldn't be so polite. Many people dared to look at him seriously for a while. They could clearly see that he was in a good mood and was even smiling. Faced with everyone's questioning and pleading gazes, what else could Bailey Yuanlong do besides personally pouring tea for them? Was he supposed to tell them that His Highness Duke of Qin was in a good mood because Gu Beiyue had taken down Medical City and Qin Wangfei was about to return? Not to mention here, Bailey Yuanlong wouldn't say it even in private. That would be too damaging to his master's dignity. Bailey Yuanlong passed the tea Long Fei Yi had poured to the strategists and deputy generals, giving them a reassuring look. Everyone relaxed. After 3 rounds of tea, Long Fei Yi's smirk finally disappeared. He raised his head, his eyes deep and cold. Everyone who had just relaxed immediately tensed up again, not daring to be careless. Is everything ready? Long Fei asked coldly. Everything is ready. We can set out at any time. After saying this, Bailey Yuanlong gave a detailed report of the military affairs that each deputy general was in charge of. Long Fei Yi gently stroked the Yixing clay teapot as he listened, occasionally asking a few questions. It was extremely quiet in the large tent, just like his cold and silent face. Even the air was suffused with tension. After the poison sect was rehabilitated, Ning Qing withdrew some of his troops, but not all of them. That brat is probably waiting for us to set out, a strategist said. Hee, we won't disappoint him this time. Even if he's waiting for us to set out, we'll catch them all off guard. Bailey Yuanlong handed over a map of the mermaid army. That's right. Long Fei Yi was officially going to use the mermaid army in this battle. Your Highness, we can guarantee that the entire army will cross the Sand River in one day, Bailey Yuanlong vowed. Your Highness, Ning Cheng's forces were originally on par with ours, but they suffered heavy losses in the war between the 3 kingdoms. Even if he has the red barbarian cannons now, we're not afraid of him, a deputy general said excitedly. What do you mean we're not afraid of him? We weren't afraid of him to begin with. His Highness just didn't want to use the mermaid army so soon, a strategist retorted. You're damaging our morale by saying that. This general, the deputy general glanced at Long Fei Yi, his face red with emotion. He wanted to explain, but couldn't find the words. Fortunately, Bailey Yuanlong came to the rescue when he saw His Highness Duke of Qin's expressionless face. He changed the topic to northernly, Your Highness, Jun Xia only arrived at Wintercrow country yesterday. Even if he got a horse as soon as he arrived, he wouldn't make it in time. As long as we take down Ning Qing, our chances of victory are great. Bailey Yuanlong said seriously. In the end, Long Fei Yi would have to personally take command of this battle. However, he'd planned for it to happen a year later. When Ning Qing, Western Zhou, and Tianan had all suffered heavy losses, Northernly would step in. He'd take control of Medicine City, the south-central grain region, and the Jianghu's factions. Then, he'd lead his army north and kill his way to Northernly. He hadn't put Medical City until last, but he hadn't expected Han Yunxi's identity as a member of the poison sect to be exposed on Celestial Mountain and cause so much trouble. Of course, he hadn't expected Gu Beiyue to take Medical City so easily either. To be more precise, the one who truly surprised him was Gu. If Gu hadn't exposed Gu Yuntian's crimes, Gu Yuntian and the Gu clan's power in Medical City wouldn't have collapsed so quickly. Even if Gu Beiyue had won the position of head of the medical academy with his own strength, he wouldn't have been able to reshuffle the complex factions within the medical academy in such a short time. After all, the strongest faction in Medical City was the Gu clan. Gu Beiyue had shone with extraordinary splendor and secured his position as head of the academy, while Gu had been the one who'd sacrificed the most. Had Gu accidentally become an indestructible poison Gu human because he'd been experimenting with medicines since he was a child? Or perhaps Gu's indestructible body had other secrets. Long Fei Yi had specifically told Chu Shifeng to keep an eye out for public opinion in Medical City. He was reassured by the fact that the medical skills competition had attracted everyone's attention. Even now, no one had pursued the matter of Gu's special constitution. Since they'd taken over Medical City and Ningqing had deployed the red coat cannons to guard against Northernly, Long Feiyi had to give it his all. This was such a good chance. Han Yunxi had been condemned by the masses and Gu Qishao had opened up his scars in exchange. He couldn't miss this chance. After discussing the preparations for war, everyone bid farewell. Only then did Bailey Yuanlong remind him in a low voice, "Your Highness, we have to be careful of that old fox." They still had very little information on that old fox. Otherwise, Long Feiyi wouldn't have used Bailey Mingxiang to lure the snake out of its hole. They only knew that the old fox had ambushes at Celestial Mountain and the Han estate. Moreover, it was very possible that he'd colluded with the City of Daughters City Lord in the matter of Grand Concubine Yi. His poison skills were high, and he knew Long Feiyi's identity. As for the old fox's origins and motives, they still had no idea. Long Feiyi stared at Bailey Yuanlong for a long time before he slowly spat out 2 words. "Wind Clan. Wind Clan." Bailey Yuanlong was alarmed. Among the 7 noble clans, the Di, Yu, Ing, and Feng clans were loyal to the West Qin Imperial clan. The remaining Black clan and White clan were loyal to the East Qin Imperial clan. As for the Neutral Li clan, they were paid by the East Qin Imperial clan. Their so-called allegiance was only on the surface. The only ones truly loyal to the East Qin Imperial clan were the White and Mermaid soldiers. After East and Western Qin fell into chaos and Western Qin was destroyed, the Black clan openly rebelled and joined forces with the Wind clan to destroy the last of East Qin's imperial troops. Long Feiyi had once investigated and found that the Di clan was the one who started the final battle. They were the ones who provided the military funds and joined forces with the Black and Wind clans. In other words, the Black and Wind clans had been bribed by the Di clan. Everyone said that the Di clan was the first of the 7 noble families to be destroyed, but they were only retreating for the sake of advancing. Western Qin was the main culprit behind the war, while the Di clan was the executioner who destroyed East Qin. The Black and Wind clans were accomplices. As for the Li clan, they took East Qin's salaries and disbanded their armies to declare neutrality. Their crimes were even more unforgivable. Long Feiyi wanted to establish a new dynasty, but that didn't mean he wouldn't avenge his country. Han Yunxi was an exception. Wind clan, good. Your Highness, let's lure him out. Perhaps we can follow the vine to the melon and find the Black clan. Traitors must be killed without mercy. Bailey Yuanlong was furious. Compared to Bailey Yuanlong's agitation, Long Feiyi was always calm. He said, "Last time, when Jun Yixia was rescued, the method used was very similar to the Wind clan's Imperial Wind technique. It's only a guess at the moment. Tell Heavenly Mountain that they can release the news. You just need to make arrangements for the troops and don't worry about anything else." At this point, Long Feiyi's eyes turned cold. He said coldly, "This king wants to use the Di clan's blood as a sacrifice to my East Qin's banner." At this time, the Di clan's head, Ningqing, had already made his decision. He continued to rush in the direction of Medical City. Chapter 798. Ningqing was currently rushing day and night towards Medical City. Yesterday, he'd received 3 urgent letters from the army, the Imperial City, and Cloud Realm Trade Consortium. All of them urged him to return and prepare for battle. Everyone was saying that even if Medical City fell into Gu Beiyue's hands, they could still find a reason to wage war against the South Central Region's Commander-in-Chief's estate. Moreover, they had to take advantage of the fact that Han Yunxi and Long Feiyi hadn't returned to the South Central Region's Commander-in-Chief's estate to send out their troops. Otherwise, the longer things dragged on, the worse it'd be for them. Han Yunxi and Gu Beiyue had reprimanded Medical City for its inhumanity in front of everyone. Now that they were in charge, they wouldn't punish Tianning for the war between the two nations. If they did, then they'd be smashing their own feet with a rock. It'd definitely attract the attention of those within Medical City who'd take the chance to cause trouble. Unfortunately, Ning Qing didn't want to go to war, because he still didn't know what Long Fei Yi was doing at Celestial Mountain. Before figuring out what Long Fei Yi was up to, it wasn't a wise choice to start a war. Ning Qing had set his sights on Han Yunxi. As long as he kidnapped Han Yunxi, he could force Chu Qingge to reveal the Shadow Clan's whereabouts. Moreover, kidnapping Han Yunxi could also threaten Long Fei Yi. Compared to fighting in close quarters, it was much more worth it. Kidnapping someone was a sinister move. Ning Qing could only accept it. Now that Long Fei Yi wasn't by Han Yunxi's side, this was their best chance. There were still 2 more days before Ning Qing would reach Medical City, but Ning Jing knew nothing of this. Although she'd married into the Tang clan on a mission and Cloud Realm Trade Consortium and knew she was only using Tangli, she was still a daughter-in-law of the Tang clan. She knew less and less about Ning Chang's movements and Cloud Realm Trade Consortium's affairs. Even Ning Nuo had forced her to give up on some of the consortium's businesses. Now, she only had one mission, which was to take down Tangli and facilitate the cooperation between the Tang sect and Cloud Realm's arms trade. Ning Jing, who used to be the head of the family, had unknowingly become a chess piece. Sometimes she would think that she was just like Ningen, unable to get rid of the shackles of the family mission. Should she still serve the family wholeheartedly? At this moment, she was leaning against the window, staring at the moon in a daze. No one knew what she was thinking. She was so lost in thought that she did not even notice Tangli coming in. She had taken off the men's clothing she wore during the day and was now wearing a pure white nightgown. Her ink-black hair was scattered behind her head and her delicate face was devoid of makeup. Looking at her, Tangli couldn't help but wonder how simple and pure she'd be if she hadn't grown up in Cloud Realm Trade Consortium. However, would he like a pure and innocent girl? While she was bathing, he had secretly gone to find Han Yunxi and the rest. He assumed that she'd soak for a long time, but she was done so quickly. He tiptoed behind Ning Jing and suddenly wrapped his arms around her, burying his head in her neck to sniff. "Jing Jing, you smell so good." Ning Jing didn't move, but said coldly, "You went to find Han Yunxi." Tangli was alarmed. His arms around her waist stiffened. Ning Jing glanced down at his hands before a cold, meaningful smile rose to her lips. Tangli quickly recovered his composure and hugged her tighter. You guessed right. I'm on good terms with Long Fei Yi, so I can be considered friends with her. Now that Medical City is in her and Gu Beiyue's hands, of course I have to go and congratulate them." That was a very reasonable reason. Ning Jing fell silent for a moment before she pried his hand away and shoved him aside. "Congratulations. Then why didn't you bring me along?" she raged. "Why did you have to sneak off while I was bathing? You weren't just going to congratulate them, were you? You liar." "I really was going to congratulate them. Last time, you and your little brother got into a huge argument with them. Han Yunxi and Gu Beiyue are both prejudiced against Cloud Realm Trade Consortium. If I brought you along, they might not even want to see me." Tangli seemed to be explaining sincerely, but his heart was already in a mess. He was extremely vexed. He shouldn't have impulsively run off to find Han Yunxi and the rest. A shrewd woman like Ning Jing would definitely be suspicious. He could only use his friendship with Long Fei Yi as an excuse to dispel her suspicions. If he kept denying it, it would only make her more suspicious. Ning Jing looked at Tangli without a word, but only smiled coldly. Tangli grew even more flustered. This was the first time he'd been in such a wretched state after competing with this woman so many times. Jing Jing, don't be angry. I know Cloud Realm Trade Consortium has grudges with them, and you don't like them either. But I'm doing this for your own good. The Tang clan can ignore Medical City, but your Cloud Realm Trade Consortium has plenty of connections with them, right? When Tang Li saw that Ning Jing was still expressionless, he could only brace himself and continue. Jing Jing, if Cloud Realm Trade Consortium has any dealings with Medical City in the future, I can be the middleman, right? When the time comes, won't your little brother come to us for help? Won't he have to see your face then? Finally, Ning Jing nodded. Very good. Tang Li was about to explain further when Ning Jing suddenly picked up a vase and threw it at him. Tang Li, tell me, have you taken a fancy to Han Yunxi? Tang Li gave a start, but quickly recovered his wits. He almost laughed out loud, but managed to hold it in. So Ning Jing was jealous. He thought his relationship with Han Yunxi had been exposed. What a false alarm. Answer me, Ning Jing rushed in front of him. I. Tang Li was wild with joy. He couldn't tell if he was happy because Ning Jing was jealous, or because Ning Jing didn't suspect anything. What about me? If you don't explain yourself today, I won't go back to the Tang clan with you. Ning Jing punched him, but Tang Li immediately grabbed her hand and wrapped it around his own. He pulled her close and said, Come, let your husband smell you. Compared to your fragrance, your husband prefers the smell of your vinegar. Ning Jing wanted to push him away, but unfortunately, she couldn't. Tang Li was simply a hungry wolf. He sniffed behind her ear, her neck, and even went all the way down along her neckline. Ning Jing's heart was beating wildly. She had long known about his bad side. As long as he had a bad idea, she knew what he would do tonight. As expected, his hands began to move restlessly. Let go. Ning Jing's tone was very bad, but Tang Li pretended not to hear it. Ning Jing didn't hesitate to press on his weakest part and said angrily, Explain yourself, or I'll cripple you. Are you willing to do that? Tang Li's voice suddenly became gentle. Try me if you don't believe me. Ning Jing said coldly. Instead of explaining, I'd rather love you with my actions. Tang Li smiled. Pervert. Ning Jing suddenly raised her hand and slapped Tang Li's face. Tang Li was stunned and quickly let go of his hands. Ning Jing was also stunned. She was the one who slapped him, but she was shocked. When Tang Li let go of his hands, her heart inexplicably skipped a beat and she didn't know what to do. Tang Li covered the side of his face that was burning. He lowered his eyes and didn't look at her. He said lightly, I thought I've already explained it clearly. If you don't believe me, there's nothing I can do. After he finished speaking, he turned and left. Ning Jing stood in place for a while before she recovered her wits. She didn't think she was wrong, but why did her heart clench? Bastard Tang Li, he just left like that. Where was he going? Was he not going to come back to sleep tonight? Ning Jing bit her finger as she furrowed her brows. In the apricot grove, Tang Li had repeatedly spoken up for Han Yunxi and the rest. She had suspected that Tang Li and the Long Fei Yi couple had a close relationship. Before, Tang Li hadn't been in charge of the Tang clan. Tang Li and the Long Fei Yi had been on good terms in private and didn't involve the Tang clan. But now that Tang Li was the clan head, what if he and the Long Fei Yi continued to be friends? Would the Long Fei Yi one day be able to use the Tang clan as well? Or perhaps the Tang clan and the Long Fei Yi couple were secretly working together in the first place. But did they intentionally hide it from Cloud Realm Trade Consortium? Actually, she wasn't jealous today, but giving Tang Li a way out. She never thought that she'd end up with a slap on the face. Ning Jing had never been so flustered in her life. She finally realized that it was impossible for her to remain calm and rational when faced with this man. No matter what, she had to tell Ning Qing that Tang Li had gone to see Han Yunxi behind her back. But she'd already written the secret letter and burned it herself. She sat on the bed and stared blankly at her hand that had just slapped Tang Li. She sat like that until midnight when she heard movement outside the door. She quickly lay down and pretended to be asleep. Tang Li had returned. She heard the door close, his light cough, and the sound of him changing his clothes. She gritted her teeth as her mind turned into a mess. Tang Li lay down, but he didn't hug her like he did every night. Instead, he turned his back to her. In the darkness, Ning Jing's eyes were wide open as she focused on the person beside her. Unfortunately, Tang Li didn't turn around until daybreak. She hadn't slept a wink all night, but so had Tang Li. Still, their moods were the complete opposite. Tang Li thought that it was worth it to take a slap to dispel Ning Jing's suspicions. He could use this chance to give her the cold shoulder. He'd just received a secret report that Long Fei Yi was going to send out his troops ahead of schedule. If he could take over Cloud Realm Trade Consortium's arms trade soon, it'd be a huge setback for Ning Qing and a huge boost for Long Fei Yi. Thinking up to here, Tang Li woke up early and tidied himself up. Ignoring Ning Jing, he left the house again. They wouldn't leave Medical City for the next few days, because there was still a great show to watch after the medical skills competition. This afternoon, the Medical Academy's head elder, Vice Head Academy, and Council of Elders would publicly put Gu Yuntian on trial and officially rehabilitate the poison sect. Early that morning, Han Yunxi and Gu Beiyue were drinking tea in the courtyard. Han Yunxi was looking at a secret list of names. She never expected Gu Beiyue's influence in Medical City to be so great. Many of Medical City's famous families and important members of the Medical Academy were on good terms with him. How did you do it? Han Yunxi asked in confusion. Before Gu Beiyue revealed his true medical skills, these people shouldn't have taken him seriously. A few years ago, I secretly gathered a group of disciples from the aristocratic families. Fourth young Miss Ren was one of them. We established the Apricot Woods Association to discuss medical skills together. We regularly visited poor areas and practiced medicine for free, Gu Beiyue replied. Han Yunxi was about to ask where Gu Beiyue had learned his medical skills when Gu walked over with sleepy eyes. TSK, it looks like a good deed, but in reality, it's not a good deed. These aristocratic family disciples weren't just the future of their families, they were also the future of Medical City. In truth, Gu Beiyue had already stolen a large chunk of Medical City's foundation. Brother Gu, it looks like Medical City will be yours sooner or later. Gu chuckled. Perhaps it was because Gu Beiyue's medical skills were better than his, but Gu had an inexplicable sense of worship for him. Gu Beiyue hesitated for a moment, then said in a low voice, Shao Qi, you've done a great service this time, but don't go this afternoon, all right? Chapter 799. No matter how low Gu Beiyue's voice was, Han Yunxi heard it all. Actually, Han Yunxi didn't want Gu to go to the trial either. But she didn't know how to persuade him otherwise. If there was going to be a trial, then all of Gu Yuntian's crimes would have to be made public. Even the evidence would have to be made public. Moreover, unlike the Apricot Woods conference, everything would be made public to Gu Yuntian's side this time. All of Medical City and Cloud Realm Continent would be watching from the gates of the Medical Academy. Gu had said before that he didn't need sympathy. She believed that he was strong enough to face his unbearable past. Perhaps she wasn't strong enough herself. She was unable to calmly face a person who loved to laugh so much. In front of everyone's eyes, he was stripped naked and covered in scabs, standing in front of her dripping with blood. She couldn't accept it. She didn't want it. She was afraid that she'd cry again. Gu only pretended not to hear Gu Bayu's pleas. He stretched lazily and asked, "Have you all eaten breakfast yet?" "Old fiend, don't go. I still have something to do." Before Han Yunqi could finish, a forlorn sob sounded from outside the courtyard. "Chi big brother. Chi big brother." Mu Ling flew over with tears streaming down her face. She threw herself at Gu and hugged him tight, burying her head in his chest as she wailed. "Chi big brother, don't go. Don't go. I don't want you to go. I won't let you go. Chi big brother, sob sob, why didn't you tell Ling, why? Sob sob. Chi big brother, we've known each other since we were young. Why didn't you tell me?" Mu Ling, was crying her heart out. She always thought that Chi big brother was an orphan who grew up eating the food of hundreds of families. Later, she found out that Chi big brother was Gu Chi Sha, a disciple expelled from Medical City. A few days ago, she received news from Medical City and found out the truth. She didn't care about Pill Fiend Pharmacy's affairs and rushed over without stopping. Her eyes were almost blind from crying. She regretted so much. She regretted being so stupid when she met Chi brother. Why didn't she find out more about him? When she met Chi brother must have just been banished. He must have been covered in pain and had no one to protect him or comfort him. How could she fight with him? How could she call him a wild child? Mu Ling'er wished she could go back to the past, to the moment when they first met, and hug Xiao Qi tightly. Silence reigned in the courtyard. Chu Shifeng and Su Donglin, who'd rushed over, stood on one side, not daring to make a sound. Mu Ling'er's heart-wrenching sobs broke everyone's hearts. Gu's eyes were hooded as he allowed Mu Ling'er to hug him. After a long time, he finally pushed her aside and wiped his clothes with a look of disgust. "Your snot and tears are all stuck to my clothes. It's filthy. Get lost." Mu Ling'er cried even louder at his words. She tried to throw herself at him again, but Gu quickly backed away. "Chi brother, sob sob. I feel so bad, sob sob." Mu Ling'er couldn't stop crying. She looked up at him as she sobbed. Gu Qishao hated it when she cried the most. He was about to curse her when he caught sight of her large, bloodshot eyes. Startled, he swallowed the words on the tip of his tongue. "You're crying again." He arched a brow, his gaze still disdainful. Still, he tugged at his sleeve to wipe away Mu Ling'er's tears. "If you keep crying, you'll go blind. You'll never see me again." Mu Ling'er's sobs stopped abruptly. She didn't dare to shed any more tears, and even stopped sobbing. She stared at him and his hand in a daze. His hand caressed her long eyelashes in an unbelievably gentle caress. She didn't dare to move. She was afraid that if she moved, Chi brother would disappear and she would never see him again. Gu wiped away Mu Ling'er's tears and warned her fiercely, "Don't you dare cry again." Mu Ling'er only dared to breathe when he let go of her. Her large, watery eyes were bloodshot from crying. She looked at him pitifully like a pitiful little rabbit. "Chi brother, don't go, okay?" she pleaded. She had heard Han Yunqi's words at the door just now. Gu Qishao waved his hand impatiently and ignored her. "Old man, just listen to..." Han Yunqi's words were interrupted again. Gu turned back to look at her. His deep voice was cold as he asked, "Do you know that I've been waiting for this day my whole life?" He had waited for this day for far, far too long. He had the power to oppose Gu Yuntian a long time ago. He had all the evidence in his hands and could even threaten Ling Gai to betray Gu Yuntian. But he had never made a move. He had even made an agreement with Long Fei Yi to keep each other's secrets a secret. He had helped Long Fei-yi hide the truth about Mute Granny, and Long Fei-yi had helped him hide the secret of his immortality. He had helped Long Fei-yi break the perplexing butterfly illusion, and Long Fei-yi had helped him deal with Medical City. The only reason he hadn't made a move himself was because he didn't want to expose his identity and past. He had hoped that one day, Long Fei-yi would destroy Gu Yuntian and all of Medical City. But Han Yunxi's identity as the poison sex orphan had changed all of his plans with Long Fei-yi. He could sit by and do nothing, or leave everything to Gu Beiyue alone. But he couldn't do it. He knew better than anyone that even if Gu Beiyue became the academy head, he still wouldn't be able to seize control of Medical City in a short period of time. He also wouldn't be able to give the poison sect a fair explanation. Thus, he had no choice but to make a move against Gu Yuntian and the Gu clan. Gu looked at the silent crowd and flashed a dazzling, flirtatious smile. Since this young master has performed a great service, why shouldn't I go celebrate? Saying this, he flew away, leaving behind only one sentence. Everyone, see you this afternoon. Mu Ling-er chased after him, but couldn't catch up. She turned to Han Yunxi, tears streaming down her face again. Han Yunxi, sob. Han Yunxi, what do we do? Han Yunxi took a deep breath at the sight of the sobbing Mu Ling-er. She should rejoice that she was much stronger than Mu Ling-er. She said, there's nothing we can do. If he's not afraid, then we shouldn't be afraid either. You come with us this afternoon, but you're not allowed to cry or you'll make a fool of yourself. Got it? Mu Ling-er was still sobbing as Han Yunxi glared at her. Before she could speak, Mu Ling-er wiped away her tears. Don't worry, I won't cry. I'll do as I say. At this moment, Chu Shifeng walked over with a purple envelope in his hands. Needless to say, it was a personal letter from Long Fei-yi to Han Yunxi. Esteemed Wang Fei, this one needs to go to the medical academy first to organize the evidence for the trial. You all rest well. See you in the afternoon. Gu Beiyue left first. Han Yunxi had Su Donglin arrange a place for Mu Ling-er to stay. Once she was done, she went back to her rooms to read the letter. She already had 8 letters hidden in her hands, but this was the 9th. Although the first 8 letters were all blank, she still looked forward to the 9th one. Perhaps this one wasn't empty after all. Perhaps she could find clues to solve this mystery. Unfortunately, the 9th letter was still empty. Han Yunxi felt disappointed, angry, and wronged. She muttered to herself, Long Fei-yi, it's been almost 2 months. Don't you miss me? At least talk to me. Besides personal letters, Long Fei-yi would write her every few days to tell her about his injuries and the situation at Celestial Mountain. Then he'd teach her how to deal with the affairs of the South Central regions. Although these letters were meant for her, they were open for everyone to read. During the few days they had been in Medical City, these letters had stopped. Long Fei-yi would send special letters to Gu Beiyue about the affairs of Medical City. Although they were meant for Gu Beiyue, the letters were also open for everyone to read. Han Yunxi had always known that Long Fei-yi had a group of secret intelligence agents who specialized in collecting information about various forces. Therefore, he had many types of letters and had a wide range of categories. There were also different procedures for sending and receiving letters according to the categories. He also had a specially trained Eagle team to support the exchange of information. This time, Long Fei-yi had sent letters to her and Gu Beiyue separately. The letter he sent to her mentioned Celestial Mountain and the South Central regions, but didn't mention Medical City at all. The letter he sent to Gu Beiyue specifically focused on the situation at Medical City. Han Yunxi wasn't curious about this. Although she was disappointed, she wasn't angry or disappointed. Han Yunxi quickly composed herself and replied to Long Fei-yi with a smile. He sent her blank letters every day, and she sent him the same sentence every time. Long Fei Yi, I miss you. After sending the letter, Han Yunxi put away the purple blank letter as usual. This was already the 9th letter. There should be a 10th, right? She didn't know how many letters it would take for them to meet. He had sent a letter a while ago saying that he was recuperating and wouldn't be able to leave the mountain for a year or so. Han Yunxi thought that after dealing with the affairs at Medical City, she would go back to the South Central regions first, and then go to Celestial Mountain. Ningqing had already retreated, and Long Fei Ye's letter clearly stated that after Ningqing retreated, the Bailey army would only defend and not attack. They would observe the situation and Northern Li's movements for a while before deciding whether to send troops. It was now the end of summer and the beginning of autumn. Han Yunxi thought that after she went back to the South Central regions to deal with the autumn harvest, she could make a trip to Celestial Mountain before the snow closed the mountain. She had even thought about it. She would accompany Long Fei Yi to spend the winter on Celestial Mountain. Once the snow melted, she would go down the mountain. After all, the South Central regions needed someone to hold down the fort. Otherwise, those aristocratic families would overturn the sky. Han Yunxi trusted Long Fei Ye's letters so much. He had put in so much effort to make plans for the South Central regions, hoping that she could help him as much as possible and let him recuperate. Unfortunately, the letter Long Fei Yi sent her, regarding the situation at Celestial Mountain and the South Central region's administrative affairs, were all lies. Han Yunxi's letters were all sent through the hands of several servants at the Nine Xian Palace at the top of Celestial Mountain. Long Fei Yi was certain that the contents of these letters would definitely be revealed to that old fox. Therefore, he could only hide it from Han Yunxi for now. The real letters were all secretly sent to Gu Beiyue, and Gu Beiyue knew the truth. At this time, Gu Beiyue was also in his room reading the letters secretly sent by the Shadow Guard. After he finished reading, he was stunned for a long time, not knowing what to think. In the end, he helplessly shook his head and smiled. That's good, that's good. Finally, such a day has come. Long Fei Yi, I only hope that you will keep your promise. At this time, a shadow guard suddenly appeared. Dr. Gu, His Highness didn't write a few words in the letter. He wanted this subordinate to tell you personally. Chapter 800. The shadow guard whispered to Gu Beiyue for a long time. As for what they were talking about, only the two of them knew. Even the surrounding shadow guards consciously retreated to the side. They all knew that His Highness Duke of Qin would only send someone to tell him about extremely confidential matters, and not write them down in a letter. Even if His Highness Duke of Qin's eagle was very safe, there was still a chance that it would be leaked midway. Sending someone to tell him about it was the safest option. The relationship between His Highness Duke of Qin and Gu Beiyue was a mystery to begin with, and Gu Beiyue's background was only known to Imperial Bodyguard Chu. What exactly did the Shadow Guard tell him this time? It was impossible to say that they weren't curious. However, even though Gu Beiyue was amiable, the Shadow Guard didn't dare to act rashly out of fear of their master's prestige. The Shadow Guard and Gu Beiyue whispered for a long time. Gu Beiyue's expression was as calm as ever, and he occasionally smiled and nodded. In the end, the Shadow Guard handed Gu Beiyue a large pink and purple envelope. Dr. Gu, this is what you want. After the Shadow Guard left, Gu Beiyue opened the large envelope. He saw that there were 10 separate letters inside, and each one had been opened before. Gu Beiyue could see that there was a faint sadness in the depths of his eyes. However, he quickly smiled. He didn't read the letters, but put them away. Afterwards, he ordered the Shadow Guard, esteemed Wang Fei will secretly leave late at night. Make the arrangements. After he finished speaking, he added, don't tell her yet. After the trial this afternoon, he will personally tell her. The shadow guard obeyed and left. Mornings were always short, and noon quickly passed. The entrance of the medical academy was filled with people. It could no longer be described as 3 layers inside and 3 layers outside. This was because the street where the medical academy was located was extremely crowded. Even if they couldn't squeeze to the front, they still wanted to be closer to the trial so that they could know the results of the trial as soon as possible. Actually, the outcome of the trial would be to convict Gu Yuntian of his crimes and vindicate the poison sect. But how serious Gu Yuntian's crimes would be, how to punish him, and how to vindicate the poison sect was all up for debate. Whether Gu Yuntian was sentenced to death or given some punishment that would make him wish he was dead, both were called trials. The severity was different, and both had a great impact on Gu Yuntian and the Gu family. The impact on the Gu family was directly related to the balance of power among the families in Medical City. Was it to absolve the poison sect of all their crimes and acknowledge their status in Cloud Realm? Or was it to return everything to the poison sect and unseal their forbidden grounds? These were all trials. Different degrees of severity would have different effects on the medical academy and the various powers in Cloud Realm. After all, Han Yunxi wasn't just the poison sect's orphan, she was also the princess consort of the commander-in-chief's estate. When the time came, the relevant parties arrived. A few chairs were arranged in an arc at the entrance of the medical school. Sitting in the middle was none other than the new dean, Gu Beiyue. As a new official, he was still dressed in his usual white robes, quiet and beautiful. In the past, his quiet face gave off a warm feeling even when he wasn't smiling. But now, sitting in this position, he exuded an imposing aura without anger. He no longer looked like a scholar. Instead, he looked like a superior with an extraordinary background and excellent cultivation. Even his gentleness was very powerful. To his right sat 3 department heads, Department Head Hua, Department Head Ouyang, and the newly appointed Shen Jueming. After them were the members of the Council of Elders, Han Yunxi, Luo Zuishan, Li Xiuyuan, and Li Tianxi. After them were the directors. The first to his left was Gu, followed by Gu Muling, and then Muling, After her were the distinguished guests from the various powers. In that order were representatives from Medicine City, the Tang clan, Tianan, Western Zhou, Tianing, and Northern Li. In the past, the medical academy's guests would be ranked according to the strength of the powers they represented. Medicine City had a close relationship with Medical City, so they would be ranked first, followed by Northern Li. But now, Gu Beiyue had changed the rules. Smart people could tell at a glance that the new academy head was using this opportunity to announce the medical academy's position to the world. Leaving aside Gu Qishao and Mulinger, just the locations of Medicine City and the Tang clan made it clear who was close and distant. Mu Qingwu inwardly rejoiced that he'd made the right choice. Otherwise, he didn't know how his father would punish him when he returned. Duanmu Bei had already received a letter from his imperial father yesterday, requesting that he be on good terms with Gu Beiyue and Han Yunxi. Although he wasn't happy, he knew that things were different now. He couldn't afford to offend these people. The Tianing officer's face was black the entire time. He was well aware that he couldn't get on good terms with Medical City. As for Bai Yanqing, he'd been staring coldly at Gu Beiyue since the beginning. Bai Yuqiao wasn't by his side. Tang Li and Ning Jing were sitting next to the people from Medicine City. The two of them were still in a cold war and refused to acknowledge each other. Before Gu Yuntian's trial, Gu Beiyue had first rehabilitated the poison sect. He cleared up the internal strife between the poison sect and the medical academy in the past, as well as all the crimes the medical academy had imposed on the poison sect. He announced that the poison sect's forbidden grounds had been lifted and that the land behind the medical academy, including its poison grounds, was returned to the poison sect. Moreover, he acknowledged that the poisoned sect was a part of the medical academy. The medical academy restored the medical sect and poisoned sect to their former glory. All of the poisoned sect's affairs were handed over to the poisoned sect's orphan, Han Yunxi. As the master of the poison beast, Han Yunxi naturally became the head of the poison sect. After seeing the gentleman last time, Lil Thing had been hiding in the poison storage space to heal its wounds. It seemed to have sensed the atmosphere and slipped out to watch the show as well. Still keeping a low profile, it only poked its head out of Mama Yunxi's medical pouch. But soon enough, it sensed that something was off. Its shifty eyes looked towards Bai Yanqing. His scent was familiar, but there was no blood in it, so it couldn't tell what it was. After the poison sect was rehabilitated, it was Gu Yuntian's turn. When the shackled Gu Yuntian and Great Elder Ling were escorted onto the stage, the noisy crowd instantly fell silent. Everyone turned to look at Gu Yuntian. Although Gu Yuntian was old, he took good care of himself. But now, he seemed to have aged 10 years overnight. Half of his hair was white, and his face was unkempt. He looked listless, old, and miserable. Those who didn't know him would think that he was a beggar. As for head Elder Ling, his face was covered in tears. He was still wiping them away. The distance between heaven and hell was actually very, very short. Detestable people were always pitiful, but Gu Yuntian had no trace of pity. He was absolutely detestable. When Gu Yuntian was brought to his knees, Han Yunxi, Gu Beiyue, and Mu Ling all glanced towards Gu. Gu didn't avoid them as much as they'd imagined. He sat with one leg crossed over the other as he looked disdainfully at Gu Yuntian. Only now did they truly see Shao Qi's strength. Someone come, bring out all the evidence of Gu Yuntian and Ling Gai's crimes. Gu Beiyue said loudly. The medical assistant brought out all the evidence, and Gu Beiyue laid it all out in front of him. The evidence wasn't just about how they'd tortured Shao Qi, but also all the scandals they'd committed in the medical academy over the years. Of course, the evidence for these scandals came from Gu Qishao. Everyone listened quietly. Gu Beiyue, Han Yunxi, and the others didn't pay any more attention to Gu. Too much attention was an insult to him, and he didn't need pity. Mu Ling's eyes reddened when she heard the evidence, but she remembered Han Yunxi's instructions and didn't cry. However, apart from them, everyone else was looking at Gu. Their gazes were even more complicated than at the Apricot Woods conference. Pity and sympathy were the majority. Gu was magnanimous and allowed them to look at him. He smiled as he looked disdainfully at Yuntian, unmoved by the gazes of the people around him. True strength wasn't the ability to endure pain, but rather the pitiful and sympathetic gazes of others. In the end, Gu Beiyue, the 3 vice deans, and the elders decided to convict Gu Yuntian. He was sentenced to be paraded in public and imprisoned in Medical City's 9 Lives Temple. That place specialized in treating patients with incurable infectious diseases. Although they were separated from each other, that place was still very dangerous. Even the medical staff had to take preventive medicine and couldn't stay there for long. The consequences of Gu Yuntian being imprisoned there for long periods of time were obvious. As for head Elder Ling, he was sentenced to death because of his merit in reporting Gu Yuntian. Head Elder Ling breathed a sigh of relief when he heard the verdict. When Gu had threatened him with a pile of evidence, he knew that he and Gu Yuntian wouldn't be able to escape this calamity. Thus, he chose to betray Gu Yuntian in exchange for his own death. Because of Gu Yuntian, Gu Beiyue sentenced the Gu family to the crime of harboring a criminal. They were forbidden from participating in the Medical Academy's administration for the next 10 years. After the verdict, Gu Beiyue stood up and apologized to everyone on behalf of the Medical Academy. Then, the vice deans, elders, and board of directors all stood up and turned to face Gu Beiyue. Gu didn't expect this and abruptly jumped up from his seat with a guarded expression. Gu Beiyue, what are you doing? Gu Beiyue didn't answer him. Instead, he bowed deeply. Shao Qi, Medical City has let you down. Medical City welcomes you home at any time. As soon as he finished speaking, the people behind Gu Beiyue bowed in unison and said in unison, Shao Qi, Medical City welcomes you home at any time. Home, Gu blinked his long, flirtatious eyes and smiled, but there were clearly traces of tears in his eyes. So he still had a home. Back when he was expelled from the medical academy and was thrown eggs and rotten vegetables all the way out, he didn't have a home anymore. The word home didn't exist in his life. Gu looked at Gu Beiyue's sincere and serious face and laughed louder and more heartily. He was about to answer Gu Beiyue. Unexpectedly, Bai Yanqing suddenly stood up and questioned, Dean Gu, Shao Qi has been fed medicine since he was in his mother's womb. He's been tested for drugs and illnesses. Why hasn't he died yet? Why hasn't he fallen ill or suffered any pain? Could it be that he's a monster? His words caused an uproar in the crowd. Actually, everyone had considered this question before, but no one dared to ask it in public. Bai Yanqing walked out and stood in front of Gu Beiyue and Gu Yuntian. He continued, also, back then, Shao Qi died of an unknown plague. He didn't even have a pulse or breath. How did he come back to life? Can he come back from the dead, or was he born a monster? His life and death are different from ordinary people. For a moment, the uproar quieted down. Bai Yanqing asked about Dean Gu, but no one knew whether this Dean Gu was a new one or an old one. In the silence, everyone looked at Gu again. This time, their gazes were no longer sympathetic, but filled with curiosity and fear, as if they were looking at a monster. I also want to ask, Gu Yuntian. Is Shao Qi still considered a human? Not really. He was a monster since he was in his mother's womb. He didn't die from that kind of torture. No matter how much he was tortured after he was born, he wouldn't die, hee. Then he really doesn't look like a human. Hee, even a beast's body isn't as good as his, right? A few people deliberately mocked loudly. Gu's smile disappeared. His long and narrow eyes narrowed into a straight line. Ruthlessness was written all over his face. He clenched his fists. Just as he was about to make a move, Han Yunxi suddenly walked to his side and clenched his fist tightly. Chapter 801. Han Yunxi gripped Gu's fist tightly. Gu tilted his head and whispered, Poison girl, let go. Be good. In the past, he would have been overjoyed if Han Yunxi had taken the initiative to hold his hand. But now, he was trying his best to restrain his anger so that he wouldn't lose his rationality and vent his anger on Han Yunxi. He was already on the verge of losing control, yet he could still call her poison girl so gently. Just how much did he dote on her? I won't let go. Han Yunxi didn't let go. Instead, she pried open his fist and held his hand tightly. Gu's heart skipped a beat. He stared blankly at his and Han Yunxi's tightly interlocked hands. If this moment could last forever, he would accept it even if he was consigned to eternal damnation by the people around him calling him a monster. Unfortunately, he didn't even have the chance to do so. He quickly regained his senses and steeled himself to break free. But to his surprise, Gu Beiyue gripped his other hand with the same strength as Han Yunxi's. It was so tight that it gave him the illusion that they would never be separated. Old ghost, don't fall into his trap, Gu Beiyue whispered. Old ghost, I'll protect you this time. Trust me. Han Yunxi's eyes flashed with ruthlessness. Gu Qishao finally calmed down. He'd never had someone hold his hand so tightly before, much less both of them. Old Ghost was the fearless Gu Qi Sha. Shao Qi was Medical City's monster. They called him Old Ghost and not Shao Qi. This was to tell him that no matter who he was, no matter what his past was, and no matter how strange his constitution was, he would always be the Gu they knew, the same Gu Qi Sha. For the first time in his life, he realized that there were people in this world who would protect him. How could he let them down? He smiled. He gripped Han Yunxi and Gu Beiyue's hands tightly. Although his right hand was reluctant to part with them, he still released them with his left hand. As a friend, there was no need for them to support him. As long as they stood side by side, that would be enough. How could he not see the intention of this group of hecklers? This was clearly a trap. It was clearly a trap that was carefully prepared to deal with him, Han Yunxi and Gu Beiyue. Ever since his identity was exposed, many people had been keeping an eye on him. Gu Beiyue had used the trial as an excuse to let him return to Medical City. If he used force to kill someone today, it would definitely cause a huge commotion. With how vicious these people were, they might even turn him into a terrifying monster, a public enemy that threatened the safety of Cloud Realm Continent. She might even discover the secret of his immortality. Once the secret of his immortality was exposed, the fact that the poison sect was raising poison Gu humans would be confirmed. At that time, both the Medical Academy and the poison sect would be hard-pressed to escape the blame. Gu didn't know why he had an undying body, nor did he know what the poison sect's poison Gu people looked like. Was he one of them? He only knew that he had to keep this secret. In the past, it was for his own sake. Today, it was for the poison sect and Medical City, for Han Yunxi and Gu Beiyue. Keeping silent was his most rational choice. He fell silent and smiled as he looked at the Northernly Imperial physician and the people in the crowd who were clamoring for him to come out. Seeing Gu's heartless smile, the hecklers withered. But the Northernly Imperial physician spoke up again. It looks like Gu Yuntian can't explain Shao Qi's constitution. Academy head Gu, old man suggested that the Medical Academy set up a special research team. What's your name? Han Yunxi cut him off coldly. Han Yunxi could repeat the Imperial physician's words without missing a word. This fellow wanted to use Cloud Realm Continent safety as an excuse to ask Medical City to set up a special research team to study Gu's body. How was this any different from Gu Yuntian's actions? Gu Yuntian was a medical maniac who would do anything for the sake of medical research. This Imperial physician, on the other hand, only cared about Cloud Realm Continent's safety. Both of them were equally selfish. Han Yunxi stared icy at the Northernly Imperial physician, her gaze no less vicious than Gu's. Although Bai Yanqing had only decided to pretend to be Northernly's Imperial physician Nazadelin after arriving at Medical City, the man lived in seclusion in Northernly. Very few people had seen his true face, and Bai Yanqing had disguised himself as well. How could it be easy to see through him? But for some reason, Han Yunxi's stare made Bai Yanqing feel a little guilty. He avoided Han Yunxi's gaze and rose to his feet before bowing politely. This one is Northernly's Imperial physician Nazadelin. Han Yunxi's face was expressionless as she asked, "What's your rank?" "Fifth rank divine physician," Bai Yanqing replied. Han Yunxi suddenly sneered. "Fifth rank divine physician. Very good. Have you heard of suspended animation?" Suspended animation. This one doesn't know what esteemed Wang Fei means. Bai Yanqing was confused. You don't know about suspended animation? Han Yunxi asked again. This. Bai Yanqing finally realized that it was a trap, but he remained calm. This is the first time this one has heard of it. Please enlighten me, esteemed Wang Fei. Suspended animation is also called a weak death. It's not a true death. Simply put, it means that you look like you're dead, but you're not. According to Gu Yuntian's records, they checked Gu's breathing and found that he was no longer breathing. After checking his pulse, they thought that Gu was dead. But in reality, Gu isn't dead. He's just in a suspended animation. There's no such thing as resurrection in this world. Bai Yanqing laughed out loud. Esteemed Wang Fei, do you think Gu is in suspended animation just because you say so? Did the medical school's dean make a wrong diagnosis? Although Gu Yuntian is guilty, it's not good for you to slander him like this, right? The crowd wasn't convinced by Han Yunxi and they all laughed along with Bai Yanqing. The few hecklers started hooting again. Esteemed Wang Fei, who would believe that Gu Yuntian can't even distinguish between life and death? Gu Qishao clearly died once. That's right. He's not simple to be able to resurrect from the dead. Of course, monsters aren't simple. In my opinion, before he could finish his sentence, Han Yunxi suddenly shot out a poison needle into the abdomen of the person who spoke. The person opened his mouth as if he wanted to say something, but before he could say anything, he suddenly fell to the ground and stopped moving. No one expected Han Yunxi to suddenly use poison. Gu Beiyue and Gu were also shocked. Han Yunxi, what are you doing? The person's companion asked angrily as he helped him up. Han Yunxi's face was covered with a layer of frost, making people afraid to approach her. She said, "Murder." Instantly, the crowd fell silent. The companion was so shocked that he hurriedly went to check the unconscious person's breathing. Once he did so, he was so shocked that he quickly let go. He's really dead. He's not breathing. She killed someone. Killed someone. Han Yunxi glanced at Bai Yanqing. Do you think he's dead or alive? Bai Yanqing hurriedly came over to check the person's breathing and pulse. Not only did he feel the pulse on his wrist, he also felt the pulse on his neck. He guessed that Han Yunxi wanted to prove that he was in suspended animation. But this person wasn't breathing and didn't have a pulse. How could he be in suspended animation? He was obviously already dead. Why, as a fifth-grade divine doctor, you can't even determine whether a person is dead or alive? Han Yunxi asked again. Bai Yanqing hesitated for a moment before giving a clear answer. He's dead. Han Yunxi smiled cold. She looked at Gu Yuntian, who was kneeling at the side in silence. She asked again, Gu Yuntian, do you think this person is dead or alive? Gu Yuntian seemed to be immersed in his own world and didn't answer Han Yunxi for a long time. Gu Yuntian, if I say this person is alive, would you believe me? If I say that you even misjudged Gu's life and death, would you believe me? Han Yunxi tried to provoke him. Gu Yuntian suddenly raised his head to look at her. His brows were tightly furrowed and his face was serious. Without Han Yunxi's urging, he dragged the shackles and chains towards the deceased like a madman. He first checked the person's breathing and then seriously checked the person's pulse. How could he make such a low-level mistake? He didn't believe it. He's dead. He was very sure. He was also very sure that Shao Qi was already dead back then. The reason why Shao Qi could be resurrected was definitely because of Shao Qi's body constitution. He looked at Han Yunxi with disdain and told her again, he's dead. I can't be wrong. Shao Qi was indeed dead back then. Han Yunxi's eyes were overflowing with murderous intent. She couldn't wait to kick Gu Yuntian, this perverted old thing, to death. He had caused so much trouble for Gu. Wasn't that enough? And now, he still wanted to find trouble for Gu. It seemed that Gu Beiyue's judgment on Gu Yuntian wasn't enough. You're wrong. Naza Delin, you're wrong too. Watch carefully. As Han Yunxi spoke, she squatted beside the deceased and used her fingers to press on the deceased's eyeballs, causing the pupils to change shape. However, once she let go, the deceased's pupils returned to normal. A dead person's pupils will disperse. His pupils can still move. He's not dead. Han Yunxi explained word by word. The deceased's pupils would disperse because the muscles were loose. This deceased's pupils could still return to normal after being pressed, which was enough to prove that he was not dead. Gu Yuntian's face was full of shock. He suddenly pushed Han Yunxi away and checked the deceased's pupils. Bai Yanqing also came forward. When the two of them saw the truth, they were both shocked. Han Yunxi's heart was filled with anger. She pushed Gu Yuntian to the side. When Bai Yanqing saw this, he actually consciously retreated. She took a hair rope and tied it to the deceased's finger. Very quickly, the finger was filled with blood and swollen with bruises. The blood is still circulating. How could he be dead? Han Yunxi stared coldly at Gu Yuntian and Bai Yanqing. Don't the two of you know such basic knowledge? The two of them were speechless. Bai Yanqing's eyes were filled with complex emotions, while Gu Yuntian kept shaking his head and muttering something to himself. Han Yunxi ordered someone to take a small chicken feather and placed it on the deceased's nostrils. She said angrily, "The two of you, take a good look." Not only Bai Yanqing and Gu Yuntian, but everyone present looked over. Everyone looked carefully and clearly saw that the chicken feather had been blown by the deceased's nostrils. Heavens! The person was really not dead. Impossible, impossible. Gu Yuntian fell to the ground and muttered to himself like a fool. Bai Yanqing looked at Han Yunxi and was about to explain himself when Han Yunxi suddenly threw the thick pile of evidence in Bai Yanqing's face. She roared. Chapter 802. A thick stack of evidence slammed into Bai Yanqing's body and scattered, revealing Bai Yanqing's livid face. The bridge of his nose was injured and red. Han Yunxi raged, "I'll have to trouble you to look carefully. Didn't these records say that Gu Yuntian and Ling Gai only checked his breathing and pulse?" Even if, Bai Yanqing still wanted to defend himself, but Han Yunxi didn't give him a chance. She shouted back, "Your medical skills are inferior. You don't even know about suspended animation and can't distinguish between life and death. This isn't your fault. Who told you to be so stupid? However, based on your one-sided understanding, you made presumptuous inferences and slandered Gu as a monster. Your crimes are unforgivable. As a doctor, you should know the rigor of diagnosis. Jumping to conclusions without knowing anything is damaging to a person's reputation. You don't deserve to be a fifth-ranked doctor, let alone a doctor." Bai Yanqing looked at Gu Yuntian. He felt wronged. How could he understand something that even Gu Yuntian didn't know? People like you are lucky that you don't kill people. I don't expect you to treat people. Han Yunxi scolded again. Most of the people present were on the side of the new leader of Medical City, especially some of the older members of the medical school. They always felt sorry for Xiao Qi, so they naturally wouldn't help. As for the people who had heckled just now, seeing that their companion was still lying on the ground, their life and death unknown, they didn't dare to make a sound. Only Bai Yanqing and Han Yunxi were left to fight alone. After Han Yunxi's angry roar, Bai Yanqing finally found a chance to speak. He hurriedly said, "Esteemed Wang Fei, what you said is unfair. Didn't Gu Yuntian also not see that Xiao Qi was suspended animation?" Han Yunxi sneered, "So, you also admit that Xiao Qi was suspended animation and not resurrected?" Bai Yanqing realized that he had slapped his own face. He was as shrewd as an old fox. How could he fall into Han Yunxi's trap so easily? He told himself to calm down. Even if Gu didn't come back from the dead, he has been taking medicine since he was in his mother's womb and has been eating medicine for food. How did he grow so big? And still so healthy? Bai Yanqing asked. Are you really a 5th grade divine doctor? Han Yunxi asked. Princess Consort, please answer this one's question first. Bai Yanqing said. Ever since Gu Yuntian was young, he had been tested on drugs. It was actually a normal process of taking medicine when he was sick. This process was no different from a normal person taking medicine when they were sick. The only difference was that Gu Yuntian used poison to make him sick. May I ask, why can't Gu survive? Also, there was a period of time when he used medicine as food. Not only did he drink medicinal soup, but he also ate medicinal herbs. Medicinal herbs were also food, and he was a vegetarian. How could he not grow up? The monks in the temple eat vegetarian food every day, but aren't they still fine? Han Yunxi shook her head repeatedly. Naza Delin, it's fine if you don't know medical knowledge, but how can you not know even the most basic common sense? You don't need to be a doctor, and you don't need to be a human. The moment she finished speaking, the entire crowd fell silent. But very quickly, they burst out into laughter. You don't need to be an adult, and you don't need to be a human. Han Yunxi's scolding was good, it was a wonderful scolding. Bai Yanqing's face alternated between white and red. He never thought that with his intelligence and shrewdness, he would be defeated so badly in his first confrontation with Han Yunxi. He was calmly pondering over a countermeasure when Gu Beiyue came forward and said indifferently, Gu, let me take your pulse. Gu Beiyue's voice wasn't loud, but everyone present heard it clearly. Han Yunxi proved that Gu was in a state of suspended animation, and also explained the reason why Gu was still alive and healthy. However, everyone was still curious about Gu's physique. Gu stretched out his hand, and everyone looked over. Gu Beiyue seriously took his pulse, and only finished after a while. How is it? This young master also wants to know what kind of monster I am, hee. Gu teased. Gu Beiyue laughed. Gu, I'm very sorry, but your pulse is no different from a normal person's. Even if you want to be a monster, you can't. Gu shrugged. What a pity. If you don't believe me, you can come and take my pulse, Gu Beiyue said. Everyone looked at each other. They all wanted to step forward, but they didn't dare. Bai Yanqing decisively stepped forward. He was just worried that he wouldn't have this chance. Gu generously stretched out his hand. Bai Yanqing took his pulse, and his face darkened. Gu's pulse really was normal. How was this possible? Could it be that his guess was wrong, and Gu wasn't a poison Gu human? All these years, he had been searching for the secret recipe to raise poison Gu humans. No one could be sure if the poison sect had actually come up with the recipe back then. He even suspected that the recipe had fallen into the hands of the medical academy and that Gu Yuntian had raised Gu into an undying poison Gu human. That was how Gu had been able to endure so much torture without dying. But Gu's pulse was absolutely normal. Could it be that he had guessed wrong? How is it? Gu Beiyue asked. Bai Yanqing was shocked, but he remained calm. He quickly bowed to Gu, I'm sorry. Even Bai Yanqing admitted that Gu's pulse was normal. What reason did the crowd have to not believe him? Sorry. How much is it worth? Han Yunxi laughed cold. Bai Yanqing lowered his head, wanting to continue apologizing, but Han Yunxi immediately ordered, someone come, demote Nazada Lin's medical rank by 3 and send him to the 2nd rank academy to study hard. To a 5th rank divine doctor, this was an utter humiliation. Even the teachers in the 2nd rank academy were only 4th rank divine doctors. If the real Nazada Lin knew about this, he'd probably bang his head against the wall and commit suicide. Bai Yanqing felt deeply humiliated as an imposter, but he was most worried about his own freedom. The Rank 2 school of the medical college was a completely enclosed school. One would have to stay in there for at least a year before coming out. He did not have that much time to stay in there. If he ran away and was tracked down, his identity would definitely be exposed. Academy head Gu, esteemed Wang Fei, please calm your anger. Old man is also, Han Yunxi didn't give him a chance to explain, someone come, send him away. Bai Yanqing could very well refuse, but once he did, he would be expelled from the medical world. He represented Northernly. Once he was expelled, the matter would blow up and he wouldn't be able to leave for at least a day or two. He still had an important matter to attend to tonight. Bai Yanqing was in a dilemma. In the end, he walked in front of Gu and bowed sincerely, "Young Master Gu, I've misspoken. I'm sorry, please forgive me." How could apologizing to Gu be so easy? If not for the fact that Gu still had Gu Beiyue's needles stuck in his armpit, he definitely wouldn't have let Bai Yanqing off so easily. The needles in his armpit were inserted when Gu Beiyue wasn't paying attention. It was these two needles that made his abnormal pulse return to normal. Forgive. Ha, sure. Shout, "I'm not a human, I'm a monster" 3 times, and this young master will forgive you. Gu said with a chuckle. Bai Yanqing's eyes flashed with murderous intent. His hands and his sleeves had already clenched into fists, but he still calmed down quickly. The most frightening thing about him was this calmness. Okay. He was so humbled that no one doubted his identity. He quickly agreed, and then really shouted 3 times, "I'm not a human, I'm a monster." Gu was still very satisfied. His smile was especially beautiful. When Han Yunxi saw his smile, her tense face finally broke into a smile. Bai Yanqing didn't have the face to stay any longer. He ran away in a sorry state. Although he was calm, this was probably the most embarrassing moment of his life. At this time, Han Yunxi gave the antidote to the fake death. The fake death woke up and heard everything. He was so shocked that he ran away. In a state of suspended animation, if he was poisoned, he would wake up immediately after the antidote. If he was sick, he would wake up immediately. Gu had taken the antidote before, so he should have recovered from his illness. Han Yunxi gave the final explanation. Actually, there were some doubtful points in her last explanation, but it still stunned everyone present. After all, Gu's pulse was normal, so no one could make wild guesses. And Han Yunxi herself didn't know what was going on with Shao Qi's body. Is there anyone else who doubts Gu's constitution? Gu Beiyue asked loudly. Everyone shook their heads in denial. Gu clasped his hands together, his mood even better. Mu Ling sniffed at the side, determined not to cry. The trial was over. The attendants were about to take Gu Yuntian to be paraded, but Han Yunxi stopped them. Coldly, she said, "You can't even distinguish between life and death, so how can you be an 8th-rank doctor? Come, abolish all of Gu Yuntian's medical skills." Abolishing all of his medical skills was equivalent to erasing his name from the medical academy's rankings. The dazed Gu Yuntian suddenly came to his senses and roared at Han Yunxi, "What right do you have to do this? You don't have the right to do this. You don't." Han Yunxi never paid attention to him. Gu Beiyue agreed with Han Yunxi's words. He waved his hand and ordered the attendants to take Gu Yuntian to the vehicle. Wasn't Gu Yuntian's medical skills the most important thing? Then abolish his medical skills and let him know what pain was. The trial was over. Gu Yuntian was taken to the vehicle and paraded through the streets. When the people of Medical City saw him, not only did they throw eggs and vegetables, they also threw stones. Gu Qishao stepped onto the roof as he followed the car, staring coldly without a word. Mu Ling followed closely behind. Mu Ling knew that this was already the best outcome, but it still couldn't heal Qi brother's broken heart. After all, Gu Yuntian was his biological father, his only family. How could Qi brother be so heartless? Mu Ling didn't disturb him and silently followed him. That night, as the head of the medical academy, Gu Beiyue invited guests to a banquet. Gu and Mu Ling didn't attend, but someone saw them enter the Nine Lives Palace with Gu Yuntian. Han Yunxi didn't attend either. She was in the poison sect's forbidden grounds, sorting through the scrolls left behind by the poison sect. After the banquet, the Shadow Guard wanted to send Gu Beiyue back, but Gu Beiyue took a detour to the poison sect's forbidden grounds to find Han Yunxi. There was a difficult path between the medical academy and the poison sect's forbidden grounds. The Shadow Guard asked curiously, "Dr. Gu, the carriage is ready. You haven't told esteemed Wang Fei that you're sending her off tonight?" "No, I have something very important to tell her first before I send her off." Gu Beiyue felt for the item in his sleeve with a heavy heart. After entering the poison sect's forbidden grounds, they headed for the sky pit. There was a palace near the sky pit, and Han Yunxi was there. "Dr. Gu, watch your step." "We're almost there," the Shadow Guard reminded. Suddenly, a sword light flashed in Gu Beiyue's direction. The Shadow Guard hastily pushed him aside. "Dr. Gu, watch out." Chapter 803. Gu Beiyue was shoved aside by the Shadow Guard. He could have stood, but he still fell to the ground. The medicinal pills Long Fei Yi had given him had helped him recover 30% of his internal energy. Not only could he stand, but he could also use his lightness techniques to dodge. However, he would absolutely not expose himself again unless he had no other choice. Gu Beiyue collapsed to the ground, only to see 3 masked assassins dressed in black. The 10 shadow guards hiding in the shadows all appeared and began to fight with the 3 assassins. The taller shadow guard who'd shoved him aside retreated to his side to protect him. The 3 assassins all wielded long swords, and their swordsmanship far exceeded Gu Beiyue's expectations. Their every move was filled with an unstoppable sword aura. Even the 10 shadow guards couldn't gain the upper hand against them. They had only crossed swords for a short while, but the battle was already intense. The taller shadow guard could only gape at the sight. The 3 assassins' swordsmanship clearly came from Tianshan Kenzo. Judging from their sword aura, they must have cultivated Tianshan Kenzo's Nirvana heart arts. Who are they? If their swordsmanship could reach this level, they had to be disciples of the 2 depositories and courtyards of Celestial Mountain. His Highness Duke of Qin had long taken control of Tianshan Kenzo. Zhangqiuxi's traders were all under control as well, so they couldn't have left the mountain. Even if they were Zhangqiuxi's traders, why would they target Gu Beiyue? Gu Beiyue had no enmity with them. Currently, Gu Beiyue was staring at the fight with furrowed brows. The taller shadow guard stole a glance at Gu Beiyue and saw his stern expression. He knew this wasn't good. Based on the current situation, wouldn't Dr. Gu suspect His Highness Duke of Qin? Thinking up to here, a terrifying thought flashed through the taller shadow guard's mind. He couldn't help but shiver. Could it be that this assassin really was sent by His Highness Duke of Qin? Dr. Gu wasn't a simple person to begin with, and he even kept his cooperation with His Highness Duke of Qin a secret from esteemed Wang Fei. Was His Highness Duke of Qin planning to use him to take over Medical City and then cook him as a lackey? Objectively speaking, Dr. Gu had become His Highness Duke of Qin's strongest opponent after taking control of Medical City. Once Dr. Gu betrayed His Highness Duke of Qin and collaborated with other powers, His Highness Duke of Qin's plans would fall apart. Because dealing with Dr. Gu was far more difficult than dealing with Gu Yuntian. Gu Yuntian was a medical maniac, while Dr. Gu was a world-shaking genius. This swordsmanship is so familiar. Gu Beiyue's tone was calm and emotionless, but it scared the shadow guard. Why are you panicking? Gu Beiyue asked again. Dr. Gu, their swordsmanship. For a moment, the shadow guard didn't know how to explain. Just as Gu Beiyue was about to speak, the shadow guard abruptly pushed him aside. In the blink of an eye, a sword came whistling from behind them. Another assassin. That was close. The shadow guard threw caution to the wind. No matter who these assassins were, as long as he hadn't received any new orders from His Highness Duke of Qin, he had to carry out his old orders and protect Dr. Gu with his life. He and Gu Beiyue both turned around to see another masked assassin. However, unlike the black-robed assassin, this one wasn't wearing a mask. Instead, he wore a black hood that completely covered his face, revealing only his eyes. Other than that, it was impossible to tell that the person was a man. Dr. Gu's martial arts are far superior to the other three. We can only run. The tall shadow guard was also a veteran of many battles. He saw through the situation at a glance. He grabbed Gu Beiyue and turned to flee toward the medical academy. Unfortunately, the black-robed assassin quickly landed in front of them. He raised his sword and pointed it at Gu Beiyue. Although he didn't make a sound, the murderous intent in his deep eyes was enough to show that he was determined to kill. Gu Beiyue narrowed his eyes and looked at him, not saying a word. Although he had only recovered 30% of his martial arts, his eyesight was as good as ever. He could see more clearly than the tall shadow guard. The three assassins were far more powerful than the 10 shadow guards. Soon, the outcome of the battle would be decided. Moreover, the man in front of them had superb martial arts skills, enough to be mentioned in the same breath as Long Fei. Where did these people come from, and why did they want to kill him? We can't escape. Think of a way to save him. Gu Beiyue whispered. The tall shadow guard hurriedly sent out a distress signal. First, he wanted to warn esteemed Wang Fei's shadow guard to be careful. Second, he wanted to ask the shadow guard in Medical City for help. As soon as the signal was sent out, the black-robed assassin attacked. With a wave of his sword, he sent out a wave of sword energy that could topple mountains and overturn seas. It was so powerful that it was impossible to escape. The tall shadow guard was stunned. Apart from the elders of Celestial Mountain and the old man from Kenzhou, only His Highness Duke of Qin had such ability. Heavens, who was this black-robed assassin? The tall shadow guard couldn't dodge. In the blink of an eye, he turned around and grabbed Gu Beiyue as they fell to the ground, using his body to shield Gu Beiyue. The sword energy struck the tall shadow guard. He spat out a mouthful of blood, which splashed onto Gu Beiyue's shoulder and dyed his white robes red. Dr. Gu, let's go. Gu Beiyue knew that the black-robed assassin was powerful, but he didn't expect him to be this strong. He had only seen such powerful sword energy from Long Fei Yi before. He pushed the tall shadow guard. The tall shadow guard suddenly fell to the side, his eyes wide open. He was dead, Gu Beiyue frowned. He gently stroked the tall shadow guard's eyes to make him close his eyes. The 10 shadow guards were completely pinned down by the 3 assassins. Although they knew that this was a dangerous situation, they couldn't free themselves to protect Gu Beiyue. Gu Beiyue's gentle gaze gradually turned cold. He didn't run away. Instead, he coldly stared at the black-robed assassin and asked, "Who are you? What enmity do you have with me?" The black-robed assassin only sneered. He didn't answer and continued to inch closer to Gu Beiyue. Gu Beiyue began to retreat step by step, his heart filled with doubts. This black-robed assassin had attacked so ruthlessly and quickly, but now he wasn't in a hurry to attack. What was his goal? Do we know each other? Gu Beiyue probed again. The black-robed assassin still didn't speak. Gu Beiyue coldly laughed. This one is familiar with your Heaven Mountain sword style. Once these words were said, the black-robed assassin suddenly stopped. Gu Beiyue saw this and didn't know what to think. His eyes suddenly narrowed. He was about to speak when the black-robed assassin suddenly raised his sword. Gu Beiyue decisively retreated. It looked like he only took one step back, but his figure blurred and he instantly distanced himself from the black-robed assassin. Yes, he used the shadow technique. The black-robed assassin looked at him from afar. His eyes flashed with a trace of satisfaction. He immediately chased after him. Gu Beiyue turned and ran. Because 30% of his internal energy couldn't support him for long, he could only use it once or twice. He had to use the remaining energy on the blade. Very quickly, he felt the murderous sword chi behind him. He suddenly stopped. Just as the sword chi was about to hit his back, he suddenly shifted his position and narrowly avoided it. Although he avoided it, but he fell to the ground. Shifting his position twice had used up quite a bit of his internal energy. He didn't know if he could still hold on. He didn't have time to think and quickly got up. Because the sword chi behind him was already closing in. Unexpectedly, when he raised his head, he saw Han Yunxi standing not far in front of him. Her face was filled with shock as she looked at him. Gu Beiyue did not expect this and was stunned. Han Yunxi also stood there in a daze. The two of them looked at each other. The distance between them was less than 20 steps, but it was like they were separated by thousands of rivers and mountains. They were so far apart that they were like strangers who had never met each other. Han Yunxi clearly saw his shadow technique just now. The sword chi came from Gu Beiyue's back. The sword chi was large and filled with murderous intent. But it was ignored by the two of them. White-robed gentleman. Han Yunxi murmured, her voice so low that Gu Beiyue couldn't hear her. Miss Yunxi, I. Gu Beiyue had thousands of things he wanted to say, but they were stuck in his throat. Even his words were so soft that only he could hear them. She trusted him so much, but he was hiding things from her. He was so loyal, but she didn't know his difficulties. Lil Thing rushed over and grabbed Gu Beiyue's trousers to remind him to dodge. Lil Thing hadn't recovered yet, or else it would have knocked its gentleman aside long ago. Fortunately, Chu Shifeng strode over and pulled Gu Beiyue away. At the same time, Su Donglin did the same to Han Yunxi. Whoosh! There was a loud sound as the sword chi shot out like Ho Yi's arrow. It whistled through the air and crashed into the cliff in front of them, shattering a corner of the boulder. Chi! Lil Thing suddenly cried out in alarm, pointing anxiously at the dark-robed assassin as if it knew who he was. Celestial Mountain Sword Arts. Su Donglin blurted out. Han Yunxi didn't even have time to figure out Gu Beiyue's identity, because she was even more stunned by the sword chi. She didn't know martial arts, but she remembered how powerful the sword chi Long Fei Yi had used against the old Kenzo in Tianshan Kenzo. She knew very few people in the world could produce such sword chi. Who was this dark-robed man? Why did he want to kill Gu Beiyue? Gu Beiyue shook his head. Even though he forced himself to stay calm, he couldn't hide the panic and confusion in his eyes. He'd bitterly guarded his secret for so many years. Now that she knew his identity as a member of the Shadow Clan, what would she think? How was he supposed to protect her in the future? Lil Thing jumped from Gu Beiyue's body to Han Yunxi's and tugged at her sleeve to get her attention. Its claws kept pointing at the dark-robed assassin, as if it wanted to tell Han Yunxi something. By now, the three assassins had already taken care of the shadow guard and landed behind the dark-robed assassin to face off against Han Yunxi's group. Who are you? Han Yunxi asked coldly. The dark-robed man didn't answer, but intentionally avoided her gaze. With a wave of his hand, the three assassins attacked with their swords. Retreat! Chu Shifeng said decisively. Although they brought 10 or so shadow guards with them, this dark-robed assassin was enough to take on all of them. They had no chance of winning, so their only chance was to escape. Chu Shifeng had long been thinking the same thing. Esteemed Wang Fei, let's go first, quick. If we're leaving together. Han Yunxi refused immediately. She quickly grabbed Gu Beiyue's hand and looked into his eyes. No matter who you are, you have to leave with me. You owe me an explanation. Gu Beiyue looked at her stubborn gaze as a warm smile rose to his lips. It was obviously a doting smile, but it made one's heart ache for him. He suddenly broke free from her grip and avoided her gaze as well. Chapter 804. Chu Shifeng, split up and take esteemed Wang Fei away as fast as you can. Gu Beiyue wasn't sure whether the dark-robed man was after him or Han Yunxi. In this emergency, Han Yunxi's safety came first. Whether it was the white-robed gentleman or Dr. Gu, they all wanted Han Yunxi to be safe. Gu Beiyue finished speaking and ran off in a different direction. Almost at the same time, the assassins rushed over and scattered the shadow guards who were guarding them. Chu Shifeng's heart grew alarmed when he saw the dark-robed assassin looking at them. He immediately pulled Han Yunxi away and ordered a few shadow guard to cover their retreat. They didn't have enough men, so Gu Beiyue only had Su Donglin to protect him. They split up, but the dark-robed assassin didn't hesitate to chase after Gu Beiyue. Lil Thing was the fastest to react. It jumped off Han Yunxi's body and chased after the assassin like an arrow. It jumped onto his body and began to bite him. Unfortunately, Lil Thing had suffered severe injuries on Celestial Mountain and had yet to recover. All it could do was bite wildly. It tasted fresh blood as soon as it bit into the dark-robed assassin's flesh, giving it a start. The dark-robed assassin slapped Lil Thing viciously to the ground. Lil Thing stared blankly at the assassin's retreating form for a long time before it recovered its senses. It chased after him again, but didn't dare to get too close. Instead, it chased after Gu Beiyue. His target is Gu Beiyue. Chu Shifeng, you guys hurry over there, quick. Han Yunxi was about to lose her mind. She'd shot a few poison needles, but to no avail. But Chu Shifeng didn't budge. He even dragged Han Yunxi away. Han Yunxi was furious. She crouched down and forced herself to stop. Chu Shifeng, I'm ordering you to save him. The black-clothed assassin's target was not her, but Gu Beiyue. She could tell that Gu Beiyue's shadow technique was not as good as before. Otherwise, he would have escaped with her. One had to know that in the sinkhole, she had seen the power of his shadow technique. Esteemed Princess Consort, no one can be certain that his target is only Gu Beiyue. We don't have enough people right now, so you must leave first. Once you're safe, this subordinate will immediately come over to support you. Just then, we've already sent out the rescue signal. Reinforcements will be here soon, Chu Shifeng coaxed. I order you to go there immediately. Han Yunxi roared. An expert like the black-clothed assassin could easily kill Gu Beiyue and Su Donglin. Was he supposed to wait for reinforcements to arrive to collect their corpses? Chu Shifeng's martial arts skills were the best of all the Shadow Guard members. If he went to save them, he might be able to hold out until reinforcements arrived. Chu Shifeng was still hesitating when Han Yunxi rose to her feet and grabbed him by the collar. If anything happens to Gu Beiyue, this Wang Fei won't forgive you. Esteemed Princess Consort. Chu Shifeng was still hesitant. His Highness Duke of Qin needed him to do many important things, but ever since the incident at Carefree City, His Highness Duke of Qin had ordered him to stay by esteemed Wang Fei's side and protect her at all times. He was going to arrange for esteemed Wang Fei to go back tonight, so he couldn't let esteemed Wang Fei be in any danger. Esteemed Wang Fei wanted to stay at the poison sect tonight, but he had persuaded her to come back. They had only seen the rescue signal on their way back and met up with Gu Beiyue. If they hadn't run into each other by chance, he wouldn't have let esteemed Wang Fei see any of this. While Chu Shifeng was still hesitating, Su Donglin was sent flying by the sword Qi and slammed to the ground. He spat up a few mouthfuls of blood and tried to stand up, but in the end lost consciousness. Gu Beiyue was facing off against the black-robed assassin by himself. Chu Shifeng was anxious as well. With a single glance, the shadow guards by his side chased after the assassin and surrounded him. Gu Beiyue looked over and shouted at Han Yunxi. "Go! Hurry!" He himself fled in the opposite direction, but the black-robed assassin's sword suddenly picked up speed and cut down the shadow guards blocking his way. Then he continued to chase after Gu Beiyue. Gu Beiyue used his lightness techniques again and quickly vanished into the darkness. The black-robed assassin chased after him until his figure disappeared as well. "If you won't go, I'll go." Han Yunxi grew fierce as she broke free of Chu Shifeng's grip. It was obvious who was stronger and who was weaker. Gu Beiyue was alone, so he'd die without a doubt. Unfortunately, Han Yunxi hadn't taken more than a few steps before Chu Shifeng blocked her way again. "Esteemed Wang Fei, it's dangerous, just who are these assassins? You know them?" Han Yunxi demanded angrily. Chu Shifeng was astonished. "Esteemed Wang Fei, they might know Celestial Mountain sword skills, but they definitely weren't sent by His Highness Duke of Qin. That black-robed assassin couldn't be His Highness Duke of Qin either." "Esteemed Wang Fei, how could you? I didn't say he was Long Fei Yi." Han Yunxi fumed. Chu Shifeng's heart gave a lurch as he realized he'd said the wrong thing. Actually, he had his suspicions too. The black-robed man's sword skills were far too similar to His Highness Duke of Qin's. He didn't want to kill esteemed Wang Fei at all, but only wanted to kill Gu Beiyue. That was even more suspicious. After all, the medical academy was now split between the medical sect and poison sect. Gu Beiyue wasn't in charge of medical city, but the medical sect, while esteemed Wang Fei was in charge of the poison sect. In other words, she controlled half of the medical academy. Esteemed Wang Fei was also the mistress of the South Central Region's commander-in-chief's estate. Her life was worth much more than Gu Beiyue's. Logically speaking, any enemy would want esteemed Wang Fei's life first. But this assassin didn't harbor any enmity towards esteemed Wang Fei. Chu Shifeng knew Gu Beiyue's identity, but His Highness Duke of Qin had once sent Gu Beiyue multiple secret letters to discuss important matters. He wasn't aware of any of them. His Highness Duke of Qin and Gu Beiyue had worked together in the past, so he had no idea either. Esteemed Wang Fei, Chu Shifeng didn't know how to explain himself. Even he felt like he was trying to hide 300 taels of silver here. Actually, Han Yunxi didn't suspect Long Fei Yi at all. She didn't have time to think too much about it. She didn't suspect anyone easily, much less jump to conclusions. She only suspected Chu Shifeng to provoke him into action. Coldly, she cut him off. "If it's not Long Fei Yi, then go save him right now." Chu Shifeng still didn't move. Han Yunxi was so angry that she almost spat up blood. "Alright, I never expected Long Fei Yi to be this kind of person. Do you want to cross the river and investigate the bridge? If he wants to kill Gu Beiyue today, does that mean he'll kill this Wang Fei tomorrow as well?" Chu Shifeng couldn't take it anymore. If this really caused a misunderstanding, he wouldn't be able to bear the responsibility even if he died. Seeing that the remaining shadow guards were still being held back by the 3 assassins, he didn't dare to leave esteemed Wang Fei behind. He could only take her with him and chase after them. But by the time they arrived, Gu Beiyue had already been forced to the edge of a cliff by the dark-robed assassin. The assassin stabbed forward with his sword, leaving Gu Beiyue with nowhere to run. He stepped on empty air. "Don't!" Han Yunxi's "don't" was a cry in her heart. The sight before her left her mouth agape, but she couldn't make a sound. How scared must she be to be so scared that she couldn't even make a sound? Chu Shifeng finally threw caution to the wind and threw himself over, but it was too late, too late. Gu Beiyue missed his footing and fell straight down. Gu Beiyue. Han Yunxi finally let out a sound that sounded like a miserable sob, echoing through the entire mountain forest. She threw caution to the wind and rushed over, but the dark-robed assassin suddenly flew into the air and landed on the ground, avoiding her. Han Yunxi rushed to the edge of the cliff and saw the moonlight beneath her feet. Below her was a bottomless abyss that was even darker than the sky pit. Gu Beiyue. Gu Beiyue. You owe me an explanation. Gu Beiyue. Her lips were trembling as her entire body shook. She was on the verge of losing control, but Chu Shifeng caught her in time. Otherwise, she might have toppled over. She struggled free of Chu Shifeng and glared at him. "It's all your fault." At this moment, shadows flew down one by one. It was the shadow guard. Reinforcements had arrived. 3 black-robed men landed behind the dark-robed assassin, who sheathed his sword. Han Yunxi glared at him and saw the wound on his shoulder where Lil Thing had bitten him. It was bleeding profusely. Chu Shifeng's heart felt stifled, but he still stood in front of Han Yunxi to protect her. At the same time, he shot a look at the leader of the Shadow Guard. Even though they had the numbers advantage, they were no match for these assassins. That dark-robed assassin's sword skills were comparable to His Highness Duke of Qin's. Even if another group of Shadow Guard came, they still wouldn't be able to take them down. Thus, their top priority was to protect esteemed Wang Fei. Han Yunxi looked at the dark-robed assassin and narrowed her eyes. Once again, the dark-robed assassin avoided her gaze and backed up a few steps before turning to leave. The 3 assassins brought up the rear and quickly left as well. The shadow guards didn't chase after them. Han Yunxi glanced at Chu Shifeng and didn't have them do the same. After confirming that the assassins had left, Chu Shifeng didn't hesitate to jump into the abyss to search for them. The shadow guards all chased after him, leaving only a few to guard Han Yunxi. Compared to her previous loss of control, Han Yunxi was terrifyingly calm now. Her gaze was fixed on the abyss, as if her soul had been sucked away by the darkness. The shadow guards exchanged glances, not daring to speak. Actually, even someone like Chu Shifeng would have to tread carefully down such a deep abyss, to say nothing of Gu Beiyue. Gu Beiyue had no chance of survival. The tranquil moonlight spilled over the cliffs, shrouding everything in a soundless world. No one noticed that Lil Thing had disappeared. Han Yunxi's mind was a blank. Everything that had happened tonight had been too sudden, whether it was Gu Beiyue's identity, the assassin's sword skills, or the abyss. She didn't want to think about anything except that Chu Shifeng could bring Gu Beiyue up. No matter how long she waited in the darkness, she could still wait for daybreak. Then, would she be able to wait for hope and wait for that man who was as gentle as an April spring breeze? That man had once told her in her most helpless moment, "Miss Yunxi, don't be afraid." But now her entire heart was trembling. She was afraid. Very soon, all of the shadow guards that Long Fei Yi had hidden in Medical City arrived and headed for the abyss in waves. It was almost daybreak, but Han Yunxi's gaze was still fixed on the abyss. Would she wake up from her nightmares at daybreak? Gu Beiyue was in such a big mess, but Gu was still clueless. Currently, he had just left the Nine Lives Hall, his face weary. Mu Ling, who was waiting by the door, quickly approached him. "Chi brother, hurry and bathe and change your clothes before you catch any of the infectious diseases inside." Gu creased his brows at Mu Ling, before laughing out loud. "Lass, you're so cute. It'd be great if he could catch an infectious disease." Abruptly, Luo Zuishan came to find him. "Shao Qi, something's happened to Dr. Gu. He's on the western cliff of the poison sect's forbidden grounds. Hurry and go take a look." Chapter 805. By the time Gu and Mu Ling arrived at the poison sect's forbidden grounds, it was already daybreak. Han Yunxi was still sitting on the edge of the cliff, staring blankly at the abyss. Last night, she'd seen the abyss with the help of the moonlight, but it was bottomless after daybreak. Chu Shifeng was still searching for people below with a large group of shadow guards. Occasionally, someone would come up to report the situation. Han Yunxi only listened without a word. Gu Qishao's heart ached at the sight of Han Yunxi's dejected figure, but he didn't know what to do. "Han Yunxi, just what happened last night?" "Dr. Gu, can Dr. Gu still be saved?" she asked anxiously. Luo Zuishan hadn't told them much on their way here, only that Han Yunxi's group had been attacked last night and that Gu Beiyue had fallen off the cliff. Han Yunxi recovered her wits and glanced at Mu Ling, before returning her gaze to the abyss. She didn't say a word. At this moment, Chu Shifeng arrived. Mu Ling quickly asked, "Guard Chu, just what's going on? Have you found Dr. Gu yet?" Chu Shifeng sighed. "This abyss is too deep. The top half is all cliffs and bare walls, but the middle is full of large trees and boulders. We spent an entire night searching through all of them, but didn't find Dr. Gu. Then we went further down." Chu Shifeng glanced at esteemed Wang Fei. Although he was afraid, he still spoke the truth. "Currently, we've only found the middle part of the abyss. We haven't reached the bottom yet, but we can hear the sound of water. The sound is very rapid. There should be a stream at the bottom of the abyss, but we don't know how deep it is. Now that our line of sight is clear, this subordinate has already sent people down to scout ahead." "This subordinate?" Chu Shifeng looked timidly towards esteemed Wang Fei. "This subordinate will come up to report." Then Mu Ling's eyes turned red. "Then Dr. Gu's done for. Dr. Gu's such a good person, so how?" Mu Ling would never forget how much Gu Beiyue had taken care of her when she first joined Pill Fiend Pharmacy. Later, Gu Beiyue went to treat Grand Concubine Yi at the Duke of Qin's estate, leaving her to manage Pill Fiend Pharmacy on her own. Gu Beiyue had done so many things for her in secret. Actually, after Han Yunxi and Long Fei ascended Celestial Mountain, Gu Beiyue had taken care of everything from Pill Fiend Pharmacy to the Commander-in-Chief's estate to the Duke of Qin's estate. Others might not know how hard it was for him, but she knew it clearly. Such a gentle person, such a kind-hearted person, such a quiet person, he pitied all the pitiful people around him. How did he become a pitiful person? No. Doctor won't die. He won't. Mu Ling shot to her feet and flew towards the abyss. "I'll go look too, I have to find him." Gu Beiyue finally walked over. He crouched down and stuffed the canteen into Han Yunxi's hands before giving her a long look. Without a word, he flew down and chased after Mu Ling. Few people were loyal to him, but Gu Beiyue was one of them. Gu Beiyue had called him Shao Qi. Just for that, he'd find the man even if he had to climb a mountain of swords or swim through a sea of flames. Chu Shifeng wanted to speak, but stopped himself. He'd rather esteemed Wang Fei scold him and interrogate him instead of staying so quiet like this. He didn't regret protecting esteemed Wang Fei last night instead of saving Gu Beiyue, but that didn't mean he didn't feel pained. He wanted to say something but hesitated. In the end, he resolutely jumped down and continued to search. It wasn't until noon that Gu Beiyue's group returned to the cliff. Mu Ling couldn't help but sob. Gu Beiyue didn't say a word, so Chu Shifeng bowed his head and reported the situation. Esteemed Wang Fei, there's a river at the bottom of the abyss. The shallowest part is still as deep as a person. The current is very fast. Our people searched for a long time, but found nothing. This subordinate had them keep going downstream. You knew long ago that Gu Beiyue was a descendant of the Shadow Clan. Han Yunxi cut him off. Gu Beiyue and Mu Ling were both surprised. Gu Beiyue was the white-robed gentleman they'd met at the Sky Pit. They both looked towards Chu Shifeng. Chu Shifeng had already sent a message to His Highness Duke of Qin last night, but he hadn't received a reply yet. He had no idea how His Highness Duke of Qin would handle the situation. Faced with esteemed Wang Fei's scrutinizing gaze, he knew he couldn't escape. If he lied, it'd only make it harder for His Highness Duke of Qin to explain himself. He bowed his head and replied honestly, yes. So Long Fei Yi knew long ago too. Han Yunxi's voice was tinged with anger. After a while, Chu Shifeng nodded. Yes. Then what kind of person am I? Han Yunxi's temper finally flared up. The white-robed gentleman's appearance had made her suspect her own identity. She'd even discussed it with Long Fei Yi multiple times, but she never expected Gu Beiyue to be the white-robed gentleman. Long Fei Yi had known all along, but kept it from her. Chu Shifeng hastened to explain. Esteemed Wang Fei, it was Dr. Gu himself who wanted to keep this a secret. No wonder His Highness Duke of Qin. Dr. Gu said he was the only remaining member of the Shadow Clan. He didn't know if the Western Qin imperial heir was still alive, nor did he want to search for them. Nor did he want to become the Chu clan's running dog. He said he had a special status and didn't want to stir up trouble. He only wanted to quietly stay as a doctor at Pill Fiend Pharmacy. That's why he begged His Highness Duke of Qin to keep this a secret for him. Esteemed Wang Fei, this is Dr. Gu's private affairs. If he doesn't want you to know, there's nothing His Highness Duke of Qin can do about it, right? In the end, Chu Shifeng's heart was still with his master. Han Yunxi wasn't afraid of being the Western Qin imperial heir, but she was afraid of lies and conspiracies. After hearing Chu Shifeng's explanation, she calmed down and asked, how did Long Fei Yi find out? When did he find out? His Highness has always been suspicious of Dr. Gu. After all, esteemed Wang Fei was close to him. His Highness was worried about esteemed Wang Fei's safety, so he investigated multiple times. Then in Western Zhou, Chu Shifeng explained how Gu Beiyue had been seriously injured by the Chu clan and taken hostage. Han Yunxi finally understood everything, including how Long Fei Yi and Gu Beiyue had teamed up to subdue Chu Shifeng to deal with Ningqing. Does Ningqing know of Gu Beiyue's identity? Han Yunxi asked next. His Highness already interrogated him. Chu Shifeng didn't say anything, nor did the two elders of the Chu clan. Ningqing shouldn't know, or else he wouldn't have let Dr. Gu off so easily. Chu Shifeng saw esteemed Wang Fei's lonely expression and was afraid that she wouldn't believe him. He hastened to explain. Esteemed Wang Fei, His Highness only found out about Dr. Gu's identity after multiple investigations. If Dr. Gu hadn't been seriously injured by the Chu clan, His Highness wouldn't have known his secret either. It really was Dr. Gu who told His Highness to hide the truth from you. Esteemed Wang Fei, aside from this subordinate, none of the Shadow Guard knows of Dr. Gu's identity. His Highness really is Han Yunqi interrupted again. Cold, she said, if it wasn't Ningqing, then who wanted to kill him? That person from last night clearly knew of his identity. Hearing this, Chu Shifeng's heart finally settled back into his chest after an entire night of suspense. Fortunately, esteemed Wang Fei hadn't gone into a dead end over Gu Beiyue's identity. Otherwise, even His Highness Duke of Qin wouldn't have been able to explain himself. Chu Shifeng sighed with emotion in his heart. It's no wonder His Highness Duke of Qin has taken a fancy to her. She's different from those unreasonable women. Chu Shifeng secretly rejoiced, but he had no idea how sad Han Yunqi was feeling. She respected Gu Beiyue's privacy, but why was Gu Beiyue hiding it from her when even Long Feiyi knew? She felt like an outsider who'd been excluded from Gu Beiyue and Long Feiyi's circle. Despite her sadness, Han Yunqi didn't blame him. After all, everyone had their own secrets and choices. Just like her transmigrating to this world and her detox system. She smiled bitterly in her heart. Now it looked like Gu Beiyue didn't need to give her an explanation at all. What right did she have to talk to him like that last night? But even if he didn't need to give her an explanation, he still had to come back alive and well. Gu Beiyue, do you know that Yunqi still owes you a thank you? You risked your life to save Jun Yixie's humiliation, leaving her in a sorry state after wrapping her in white robes. She fought with Long Feiyi and injured her shoulder. While she was sleeping soundly, you quietly bandaged her up and left her medicine without leaving a name. Gu Beiyue, you have to admit what you've done. Chu Shifeng seized the chance to explain. Esteemed Wang Fei, last night that person used Celestial Mountain sword techniques, but it definitely wasn't His Highness Duke of Qin. Before he could finish, Gu grabbed him by the collar. What did you say? Han Yunqi pried his hand away and explained last night's events. Gu mocked, with such formidable sword skills, Long Feiyi should have recognized him. Gu had just found out that Gu Beiyue was a member of the Shadow Clan. On the surface, he looked just as surprised as Mu Ling, but his heart was filled with waves of shock. He recalled Mute Granny. He never understood why Long Feiyi had killed Mute Granny. Besides Mu Yingdong and Lady Lianxin, Mute Granny was the only person who knew about Han Yunqi's origins. Long Feiyi had killed Mute Granny to silence her. Long Feiyi hadn't hidden his identity as a member of the poison sect from Han Yunqi, so what was he hiding by killing Mute Granny? Gu Beiyue had been well-behaved for years in Tianning's Imperial Physician Courtyard. If he really wanted to live a peaceful life, why would he have volunteered to be Pill Fiend Pharmacy's resident doctor? Why would he participate in the medical skills competition in such a high-profile manner and take control of Medical City as the head of a faction? A frightening thought rose in Gu's mind, causing his teeth to clench. But he didn't say it aloud. He prayed that Gu Beiyue was the same as him, an exception to everything else. Everything he'd done was because he couldn't control his feelings for this woman. There were no other ulterior motives. Long Feiyi is still recuperating on Celestial Mountain. His injuries are very serious, so it'll take him at least a year or so to recover. It couldn't have been him last night, Han Yunqi intoned. Chu Shifeng immediately broke out in cold sweat. Although His Highness Duke of Qin hadn't given him any instructions, he felt that he had to say everything. Otherwise, the misunderstanding would grow too big. Esteemed Wang Fei, His Highness Duke of Qin left Celestial Mountain ages ago. His Highness Duke of Qin is at Sandy River right now. He's going to personally lead the troops against Ningqing. Everyone fell silent at Chu Shifeng's words. Han Yunqi's expression froze on her face. After a while, she muttered, Chu Shifeng, what did you say? Chapter 806. Han Yunqi couldn't believe her ears. The man she missed and worried about every day had lied to her like this. Every day, she worried about Long Fei Ye's injuries and hoped that she could finish dealing with Medical City as soon as possible. Every day, she tried to figure out how to balance the power of the South Central region's aristocratic families so she could return to Celestial Mountain in one piece and take care of him. But he'd long recovered and left Celestial Mountain. He'd long taken control of the South Central region's commander-in-chief's estate and was about to go to war, but she was still in the dark. Long Fei Yi, what kind of person do you think I, Han Yunxi, am? An idiot. Even Chu Shifeng, the head of the Shadow Guard, knew the truth. What did she count for? She finally understood why Long Fei kept sending her empty letters. Faced with her missing him, what else could he do besides sending her empty letters? Seeing esteemed Wang Fei's strange expression, Chu Shifeng's heart pounded so hard that it was about to leap out of his chest. He looked towards Gu and Mu Ling, only to see one stunned and the other expressionless. They couldn't help him. What else could Chu Shifeng do besides brace himself and explain? Esteemed Wang Fei, Dr. Gu knows about this too. Don't use Gu Beiyue as the bad guy. Han Yunxi was furious. We don't even know if he's dead or alive, but you still won't let him go. Gu Beiyue had absolute power over the Shadow Clan. But Celestial Mountain, the South Central region's commander-in-chief's estate, and the war were all Long Fei Ye's own affairs. He lied to her. It had nothing to do with Gu Beiyue. Chu Shifeng fell to his knees. Esteemed Wang Fei, please calm your anger. His Highness has his own difficulties. Esteemed Wang Fei, you know that Ninexian Palace has spies who never knew His Highness had left the mountain. His Highness only lied to you because he wanted to hide it from the spies. Esteemed Wang Fei, think about it carefully. In the letter His Highness sent you, did he only mention his injuries, Tian Shan Mountain, and the Commander-in-Chief's manor in the south, and not mention Medical City at all? Also, in the letter Your Highness sent to Dr. Gu, did you only mention Medical City and not Tian Shan Mountain and the Commander-in-Chief's manor? Chu Shifeng couldn't help but kowtow, hoping to calm his mistress's anger. He continued, Esteemed Wang Fei, His Highness has always suspected that the spies in Celestial Mountain and the Duke of Qin's estate are related to Northern Li. He set up this trap for the sake of today's battle. Northern Li's cavalry has not yet recovered, and His Highness intends to take this opportunity to attack Ningqing and directly attack Northern Li. Catch them off guard. Esteemed Wang Fei, His Highness has already told Dr. Gu to send you out of Medical City last night. His Highness. His Highness has been thinking about you and has been waiting for you at Sand River. Who knew that last night? Chu Shifeng spoke from the bottom of his heart and lungs, revealing everything he knew about the situation. So his injuries on Celestial Mountain were all an act to trick me too? Han Yunxi asked in disbelief. She'd cried herself hoarse then. How could Long Fei Yi be so ruthless? Esteemed Wang Fei, if it wasn't for that act, how could the spies have believed His Highness was seriously injured? Chu Shifeng retorted. Then why did Bailey Mingxiang go to Celestial Mountain? Han Yunxi asked next. This, esteemed Wang Fei, although His Highness wasn't seriously injured, he was still injured. Dr. Gu didn't lie when he told Miss Bailey to go up the mountain for acupuncture treatment. Actually, Chu Shifeng didn't know about the dual cultivation incident either. So he's fully recovered now? Han Yunxi asked coldly. No matter how angry she was, she still missed that man. He only left the mountain after he recovered. Esteemed Wang Fei, this subordinate has already reported last night's events to His Highness. Those people last night weren't simple, so Medical City isn't safe anymore. This subordinate will send you to Sand River to see His Highness first. He'll definitely explain everything to you, Chu Shifeng coaxed. I won't leave Medical City until I find Gu Beiyue, Han Yunxi was resolute. Chu Shifeng panicked. But, although he didn't want to say it, he had no choice. Esteemed Wang Fei, Dr. Gu's odds are against him. Han Yunxi could tell what Chu Shifeng meant. Stealing her heart, she said coldly, if he's alive, I want to see him. If he's dead, I want to see his corpse. Esteemed Wang Fei, Chu Shifeng kowtowed again. Esteemed Wang Fei, this subordinate swears with my life and all of the Shadow Guard's lives that the assassins last night weren't His Highness Duke of Qin. Chu Shifeng, listen to me. I don't suspect him, Han Yunxi made her stance clear. That's right. Even now, Han Yunxi had never suspected Long Fei Yi. She would personally demand an explanation from him for his deceit. But that had nothing to do with last night's assassination attempt. Her heart was aching to death, but her mind was clear. Everything about the assassin last night was extremely similar to Long Fei Yi's. The assassin's swordsmanship skills, his silent style, his lack of reaction to Gu Beiyue's shadow arts, his purposeful avoidance of her gaze, and his lack of enmity all pointed to Long Fei Yi. But they lacked a reason to kill Gu Beiyue no matter what. Ever since they'd arrived at Celestial Mountain, Gu Beiyue had been Long Fei Yi's most capable assistant. His cooperation with Long Fei Yi was extremely important, so what reason did Long Fei Yi have to kill Gu Beiyue? Chu Shifeng felt as if he'd been granted amnesty. He didn't know what to say, but kept kowtowing. Esteemed Wang Fei is wise and brilliant. Esteemed Wang Fei is wise and brilliant. Han Yunxi took a deep breath and told herself to calm down. Actually, she didn't want to calm down at all. Gu Beiyue's death made her so miserable that she wanted to cry. Long Fei Yi's lies made her so angry that she wanted to rush to his face and demand answers. But she had no time to feel sad or angry. She told herself to calm down. Last night's assassin clearly had ill intentions. If she didn't calm down, she'd definitely fall into a trap. Even if she had to pay the price for Gu's sake, for the sake of Gu Beiyue's hard-earned position as academy head, she had to force herself to calm down. She glanced at Luo Zuishan and said cold, Elder Luo, go tell Vice Academy head Shin to hurry to the study and wait for me. Dr. Gu's fall off the cliff must be kept a secret. Luo Zuishan knew the severity of the situation and quickly left to carry out her orders. Poison lass, leave the search to me. Gu's face was taut as he hid all his thoughts. It was rare for him to be so serious. Seventh young master, please protect esteemed Wang Fei. Last night's assassin's martial arts were on par with His Highness Duke of Qin. Only you can protect esteemed Wang Fei now, Chu Shifeng said urgently. Gu laughed coldly. Han Yunxi felt helpless and said, if that person wanted to take my life last night, would I still be standing here? Chu Shifeng felt resentful, but had no words to retort. Mu Ling suddenly exclaimed, Han Yunxi, where's Lil Thing? Lil Thing likes Dr. Gu the most. It'll definitely be able to find Dr. Gu. I hope it can find him too. Han Yunxi sighed heavily, then told Gu, old fiend, I can't summon Lil Thing. It's very far away from me. After realizing that Lil Thing was missing, Han Yunxi had been trying to summon it from her poison storage space. Unfortunately, she hadn't been able to summon it. This meant that Lil Thing was very far away from her and out of range. She wasn't sure if Lil Thing had gone to chase after the assassins or Gu Beiyue. She'd rather Lil Thing had foolishly chased after the assassins. If that was the case, then there was still hope to find Gu Beiyue. But if Lil Thing had gone to chase after Gu Beiyue, Han Yunxi didn't dare to think any further. Gu understood her meaning and muttered, find him no matter how far away he is. Then he flew back into the abyss. Mu Ling hesitated before grabbing Han Yunxi's hand and squeezing it. Han Yunxi, Dr. Gu is the best person. He'll definitely be fine. So speaking, she flew down to chase after Gu Qishao. Han Yunxi sniffed and said to Chu Shifeng, let's go back to Medical City. Back to Medical City, they'd hide last night's events and stabilize the situation. Then they'd continue Gu Beiyue's unfinished business and cooperate with the Long Fei Ye's campaign at Sandy River. On the way back, Han Yunxi even asked Chu Shifeng what she should do for Gu Beiyue so she could continue cooperating with the Long Fei Ye's plans. She was frightened by her own calm. She'd always been a rational person, but never knew she could be this rational. This wasn't rationality at all, but stupidity. She was easy to bully. She knew that the reason she was so rational was because the person she was dealing with was him, the Long Fei Yi. Her greatest rationality was, in fact, irrationality. Long Fei Yi, do you know? Even though my heart hurts, I still miss you. I want to see you and be by your side. By the time Han Yunxi reached Gu Beiyue's study and was about to discuss with Shen Jueming how to hide Gu Beiyue's ambush, a piece of news shattered all of her rationality and irrationality. News of the battle at Sandy River had arrived. Last night, the Bailey army had launched a surprise attack on Tianning. In one night, 3 armies had successfully crossed the fierce waters of Sandy River and killed their way into Tianning territory. Ning Cheng's troops were caught off guard and were defeated one by one. By this morning, they'd lost 2 cities and retreated to the largest city in Tianning's southern regions, South Shao Prefecture. The Ning clan troops took advantage of the terrain and deployed all of their red coat cannons to defend the city. Only then did they manage to maintain a stalemate with the Bailey army. The Bailey army had been able to cross the river in one night only because they'd mobilized a mermaid army to control the Sandy River's waters. News of last night's battle had spread throughout Cloud Realm continent by this morning. No one expected the Bailey navy to be the legendary mermaid army. But that wasn't the most shocking part. The most shocking part was the Bailey army's flag, a large coiling dragon with white characters on a black background. Long Fei Yi was Tianning's Duke of Qin, so he'd once personally used a black flag with a strong white, Qin, character on it. After all, the great Qin Empire's East and West imperial clans both had the same, Qin, character on their flags. Western Qin's flag had black characters on a white background, while East Qin's had white characters on a black background. The only difference between Long Fei Ye's flag and the East Qin's was the coiling dragon totem on the back. This time, the Bailey Navy's flag wasn't Tianning's Duke of Qin's flag, but the East Qin imperial clans. The same coiling dragon was engraved on the back. Bailey Yuanlong publicly announced that the Bailey clan was not only a mermaid clan, but also a member of the 7 noble families, the Bai clan, who had been loyal to the East Qin imperial clan for generations. He also exposed the Ning clan's relationship with Cloud Realm Trade Consortium and revealed that the Ning clan was the Di clan, one of the 7 noble families who'd been missing for many years. Long Fei Ye's battle was the start of a war against the Di clan in the name of the East Qin imperial clan. Chapter 807. After learning of Long Fei Ye's true identity, Han Yunxi sat there in a daze, unable to recover her senses for a long time. Shen Jueming knitted his brows in worry, while Luo Zuishan's expression was gloomy and furious. To them, this news was too sudden and shocking. Meanwhile, Chu Shifeng and Su Donglin stood on one side with their heads bowed, afraid to look at esteemed Wang Fei's face. In the silence of the room, the slanting sunlight was like the footprints of time. As the sun set in the west, it gradually faded away until it disappeared behind the window. A servant girl came in to light the lamp, but Shen Jueming dismissed her. Shen Jueming lit the lamp himself and broke the silence. Esteemed Wang Fei, Dr. Gu's matter, Only then did Han Yunxi raise her head. She wasn't sure if it was because she hadn't slept all night, but her bright eyes were now dim and lifeless. She looked like she'd fallen ill and was extremely wan and sallow. She took a sip of water before answering Shen Jueming. I'll use Gu Beiyue's name to issue orders for the academy head to abolish the medical sanctions ban. We'll forever maintain a neutral stance. No matter the reason, the medical academy will never participate in the struggles of any country or organization. It's only responsible for its patients. Jueming was thrilled. This is Medical City's fortune and Cloud Realm Continent's fortune. Esteemed Wang Fei is wise and brilliant. Jueming wasn't sure if Han Yunxi had long known about Long Fei Ye's origins, but he was worried that Han Yunxi would use Medical City as a weapon to punish Tianning if the South Central Region's Commander-in-Chief's estate went to war with Tianning. In that case, Han Yunxi hadn't disappointed him. It's not that I'm wise and brilliant, but Gu Beiyue's intentions to begin with. Send orders that Dr. Gu will enter seclusion today and won't see anyone or any patients. The Academy head's affairs will be handled by the Vice Council and Council of Elders, Han Yunxi added. Esteemed Wang Fei, don't worry. Old man knows what to do. As Shen Jueming spoke, he gave Luo Zuishan a look, indicating for him to leave. However, Luo Zuishan pretended not to see and refused to leave. Shen Jueming had no choice but to leave first. Firstly, he didn't want to interfere too much with the affairs of the South Central Commander-in-Chief's manor. Secondly, Gu Beiyue's fate was unknown. There were many things in the medical academy that he had to take charge of. After Shen Jueming left, Luo Zuishan immediately sneered, no wonder. No wonder. What do you mean? Su Donglin asked angrily. The Shadow Clan's loyalty to Western Qin's royal family is well known to the world. The East Qin crown prince killing him is perfectly justified. Luo Zuishan suppressed his anger. As a doctor, he respected Gu Beiyue and remembered Gu Beiyue's kindness in saving Shao Qi. After hearing about last night's events on the cliff and learning of Long Fei Ye's true identity, it was hard for him not to suspect the Long Fei Yi. Luo Zuishan, you can eat whatever you want, but you can't speak whatever you want. Do you know what you're saying? May I ask Guard Chu, if you and your master both know Dr. Gu's identity, does Dr. Gu know that your master is a descendant of the East Qin imperial clan? Luo Zuishan asked. At this, Han Yunxi finally looked towards Chu Shifeng. Without a doubt, she wanted to ask the same question. Chu Shifeng pursed his lips, unable to answer. From what he understood, His Highness Duke of Qin hadn't revealed any information about East Qin to Gu Beiyue. If that was revealed, Gu Beiyue would hate His Highness more than anything, much less work with him. Actually, Chu Shifeng couldn't figure out his master either. He always thought that His Highness Duke of Qin and Gu Beiyue were working together purely to use Gu Beiyue. It wasn't until His Highness Duke of Qin gave the South Central Region's Commander-in-Chief's estate to Gu Beiyue and secretly worked with him to deal with the old fox that he discovered that His Highness Duke of Qin trusted Gu Beiyue completely. Even now, he couldn't figure out why His Highness Duke of Qin trusted the Shadow Clan. The Shadow Clan was loyal to Western Qin's imperial clan to the death, which meant they were East Qin's old enemies. Guard Chu, I'm asking you a question. Luo Zuishan urged. Chu Shifeng knew that if he answered truthfully, it'd be disadvantageous for His Highness, but he also knew he couldn't lie about this. Who would believe that the Shadow Clan would work with the East Qin Crown Prince willingly? Luo Zuishan waited patiently while Han Yunxi remained silent. In the end, Chu Shifeng gave in to the pressure and said, Dr. Gu, didn't know. Han Yunxi remained expressionless, but her hands tightened around her teacup. Luo Zuishan shot to his feet and demanded, what kind of good intentions does Long Fei Yi have? Perhaps Luo Zuishan's voice was too loud, but Han Yunxi's body visibly trembled. Luo Suishan, this has nothing to do with you. Please. Luo Suishan cut him off before he could finish. Academy head Gu's business is my medical academy's business. How could it have nothing to do with old man? You don't dare to answer old man's questions. What, do you have a guilty conscience? His Highness Duke of Qin gave the South Central Region's Commander-in-Chief's estate to Gu Beiyue. How could he have bad intentions? Chu Shifeng argued. Then why did Long Feiyi hide his identity from Dr. Gu? Luo Suishan asked next. Chu Shifeng was at a loss for words. His Highness Duke of Qin and Gu Beiyue were absolute opposites. There was no reason for them to make peace. They could only hide things and use them. This was a dead end. Just like the enmity between the imperial clans of Eastern and Western Qin, it would never be resolved. Chu Shifeng couldn't explain himself, so he could only look towards Han Yunqi. Esteemed Wang Fei, that man from last night couldn't have been His Highness. He's still in the army, so how could he be in Medical City? He thought, I can only do my best to convince esteemed Wang Fei that the dark-robed assassin wasn't His Highness Duke of Qin. That's the only way to give His Highness Duke of Qin a chance to explain himself. Han Yunqi's eyes flickered with disappointment. Chu Shifeng had no idea how much his mistress wanted him to keep explaining himself and give her a reason to stop her suspicions. Long Feiyi isn't the only expert in Tianshan Kenzo, right? Luo Suishan laughed coldly. Esteemed Wang Fei, this subordinate doesn't understand the relationship between His Highness and Gu Beiyue either. But this subordinate is certain that the man from last night wasn't His Highness. Esteemed Wang Fei, you mustn't think too much. This subordinate will arrange for you to go back right now. If there's anything, you can discuss it with His Highness face to face. It's better than making wild guesses here. Chu Shifeng coaxed. Han Yunqi finally spoke, her voice as cold as water. He not only tricked Gu Beiyue, but me as well. After everything that had happened last night, she still insisted that the assassin wasn't Long Feiyi. Wasn't it because Long Feiyi lacked a reason to kill Gu Beiyue? And now, Long Fei's birth was the reason. How could she trust him now? How could she not be suspicious? He hid his injuries and put on an act for the spies, so she'd accept it. But why did he hide his identity? Even if she wanted to admit it, she needed a reason. Moreover, she didn't want to admit it. Over the past 3 to 4 years, she discussed the enmity between the Eastern and Western Qin multiple times, as well as the whereabouts of the 7 noble families. When she suspected that she was a descendant of the Western Qin imperial clan, she even told him that if she really was, she couldn't help him take control of Cloud Realm continent. But what about him? He'd hidden himself so deeply. She'd even asked his birth parents about it, but he'd pushed everything to the Tang clan. Just because she didn't pursue the matter didn't mean she could lie to him. Liking someone had nothing to do with his past or identity. She respected his past and his privacy, waiting for the day when he was willing to tell her everything. But who would have thought that she'd find out everything about him in this way? When Gu Beiyue was assassinated and the war broke out, he announced everything to the world. Did that count as telling her? Then what did she count for? In his heart, was she any different from the rest of the world? What a joke! Chu Shifeng broke out in cold sweat. He was so nervous that he didn't know what to say. Su Donglin hastened to explain himself. Esteemed Wang Fei, that assassin from last night had martial arts skills on par with His Highness. Even Celestial Mountain doesn't have people like that. The honored elders won't leave the mountain, you know that. Hearing this, Chu Shifeng perked up again. Luo Suishan didn't know that the old man in Kenzo had lost all his martial arts for the sake of His Highness Duke of Qin, but esteemed Wang Fei did. Esteemed Wang Fei, It's very possible that the assassin from last night was from the heretical sword sect. Chu Shifeng said urgently. Han Yunqi waved a hand. All of you, get out. Chu Shifeng and Su Donglin still wanted to coax her, but Luo Zuishan shooed them out. Luo Zuixiao wanted to stay, but Han Yunqi chased her out as well. Luo Zuishan immediately went to the poison sect's forbidden grounds to find Gu, while Chu Shifeng and Su Donglin stood guard outside, their hearts burning with anxiety. Boss, has His Highness replied yet? Su Donglin asked in a low voice. It'd be good if he did. Chu Shifeng's handsome face was as sorrowful as an old tangerine. This won't do. I have to write another letter to His Highness. Esteemed Wang Fei must be suspecting him. Boss, say, why did His Highness, why did he lie to esteemed Wang Fei? Su Donglin asked timidly. When Chu Shifeng didn't answer, he muttered to himself, esteemed Wang Fei and Dr. Gu are close friends. Could it be that His Highness was afraid of esteemed Wang Fei's objections, so he hid everything and used Gu Beiyue to cut the weeds and dig up the roots? Slap! There was a loud thud as Chu Shifeng slapped Su Donglin's mouth. Su Donglin wanted to cry from the pain, but he didn't dare to speak. Chu Shifeng went to write a letter and came back when he saw Tang Li had arrived. But Tang Li had been turned away at the door just like the rest of them. Su Donglin had already told Tang Li everything. You mean to say that my big bro didn't tell her about the East Qin Imperial clan before the war started? Tang Li couldn't believe it. Chu Shifeng and Su Donglin both shook their heads. That's impossible. Tang Li grew anxious. My big bro would definitely tell her something so important before the war started. Didn't she get my big bro's letter last night? Chu Shifeng and Su Donglin still shook their heads. Then what about Gu Beiyue? Did Gu Beiyue get the letter? Tang Li asked next. Chu Shifeng and Su Donglin shook their heads again. Last night, Long Fei Yi had not only written a huge letter to Beiyue, but also sent a shadow guard to tell him a few things. Unfortunately, the shadow guard who knew the details had died at the hands of an assassin last night. Just what did the shadow guard say to Gu Beiyue? What did he put in the letter for Gu Beiyue? It had already disappeared into the abyss with Gu Beiyue. Tang Li felt a little powerless. He, Chu Shifeng, and Su Donglin all sat by the door, waiting for Long Fei Ye's reply. The East Qin Crown Prince's battle for revenge not only shocked Medical City, but all of Cloud Realm continent. Bai Yanqing almost fell out of his chair when he heard the news. He grabbed Bai Yuqiao by the collar and raged, impossible. Long Fei Ye is still recovering on Celestial Mountain. Chapter 808. Master, this matter is absolutely true. This disciple wouldn't dare deceive you. If you don't believe me, you can personally investigate. The East Qin Army's flag has already been raised. Although Bai Yuqiao was also very surprised, she was frightened by her master's reaction. Her master had always been calm. Even when he encountered an accident, he had never been this excited before. Bai Yanqing let go of Bai Yuqiao's collar in disappointment. His eyes narrowed into slits. Good Long Fei Yi, you actually dared to trick old man. It had to be known that he had already planned everything. Today, he would announce Long Fei Ye's identity. He already knew Long Fei Ye's identity. Bai Yuqiao was confused. She did not understand what her master was saying. She wanted to ask more, but Bai Yanqing quickly said, report this matter to your senior brother as soon as possible. Tell him that no matter what method he uses, he must bring back the warhorses as soon as possible. Otherwise, Northernly will be in danger. Master, Ning Cheng still has the red barbarian cannon. The Qin king may not be able to take down the Ning family army in a year or so, Bai Yuqiao seriously said. What do you know? Why aren't you going? Bai Yanqing angrily roared. He was on the verge of losing control of his emotions. Bai Yuqiao was scared. She did not dare say anything and quickly retreated. Bai Yanqing paced back and forth in the room. It took him a while to calm down. He already knew Long Fei Ye's identity as the East Qin Crown Prince. When Jun Yixia brought back the blood stains from Fishery Island, he learned of the existence of the Mermaid clan and suspected the Bai Li Navy. He had already found out that the Bai clan was the Mermaid clan. The drop of blood in Bailey Mingxiang had made him suspect Long Fei Ye's identity. Han Yunxi's cinnabar mole on Fishery Island had made him realize that Long Fei Yi might have activated the Lustbite seal. Long Tianma's grandmother, the Empress Dowager of the Tianan country, suspected that Long Fei Yi didn't have the blood of Tianning's imperial clan. She even spent a huge sum of silver to have the City of Daughters kidnap Grand Concubine Yi. The city lord of the City of Daughters, Madame Lengyu, had told him about this matter and he had basically confirmed Long Fei Ye's identity. Before Chu Shifeng met Murong Wanru, he had long used her life as a bargaining chip to blackmail Grand Concubine Yi. Grand Concubine Yi then revealed the truth of how she'd adopted Long Fei Yi. At this point, he was completely certain that Long Fei Yi was the descendant of the East Qin imperial family. He used his acupuncture skills to knock Grand Concubine Yi unconscious, then used Wan Miyao and Madame Lengyu to put on a good show to confuse Long Fei Yi. During the Battle of Celestial Mountain, he had He Ilyin use delaying tactics to severely injure Long Fei Yi and trap Long Fei Yi on the mountain. This way, Jun Yixia would have enough time to buy battle horses. He was planning to sit by and watch as Ning Cheng and the South Central regions fought. According to his calculations, Ning Cheng's forces would lose to Ning Qing due to Medical City's interference. Moreover, Ning Cheng's vitality would be greatly damaged. Ning Cheng had deployed all of his red coat cannons, so Tianning's northern defenses were practically non-existent. He'd bring Jun Yixia back with him to train his battle horses and send them to Tianning without any resistance. Once they conquered Tianning, the defeated Western Zhou, Tianan, and South Central regions would have nothing left to say. He never expected Han Yunxi and Gu Beiyue to come to Medical City. Not only had they resolved the crisis of the South Central regions, but they'd also taken control of Medical City. Even so, he didn't lose his composure. Because he had Long Fei Ye's weakness in his hands. Long Fei Ye's identity as East Qin's crown prince meant there were too many things he could do. He had a perfect plan that was already in motion. He was going to announce Long Fei Ye's identity today. But who knew that Long Fei Yi would discover Nine Xian Palace's spies and beat him to it? Not only did he secretly descend Celestial Mountain, he even used the mermaid army to cross the river and ambush the Ning clan troops. He even hung up the East Qin imperial banners to announce his identity to the world. Long Fei Ye's move had truly caught him off guard. Jun Yixia had no time. Northern Li had no time either. Bai Yanqing paced back and forth, walking faster and faster. He wondered if he should reveal his final trump card at this time. Bai Yanqing hesitated for a long time. It wasn't until the Nine Xian Palace's spies arrived that he calmed down. He asked if Bailey Mingxiang also descended the mountain with Long Fei Yi. They descended the mountain together. The spy reported. Long Fei Yi wasn't injured, so why did Bailey Mingxiang come to Celestial Mountain? Bai Yanqing asked again. Master, she enters Long Fei Ye's room every day. As for what she does inside, our men can't find out, the spy replied. This girl was originally Han Yunxi's servant, right? Bai Yanqing was very excited about Bailey Mingxiang. Although she was Han Yunxi's servant, she was loyal to Long Fei Yi. Master, don't forget that she is a member of the Bai clan. She knows martial arts, but she has never used it. I'm afraid that she is deliberately hiding it, the spy reminded. Why? Bai Yanqing stroked his beard. This subordinate is also puzzled. Long Fei Yi has never had a servant serving him. Now that his internal injuries have healed, there is no reason for him to keep her by his side, the spy said seriously. Since Long Fei Yi has healed, he must have cultivated the second stage of the lustbite power and can use it freely, Bai Yanqing muttered after pondering for a long time. The third stage of the lustbite power must be through dual cultivation. Master, you mean that this Bailey Mingxiang? The spy was shocked. Bai Yanqing suddenly laughed out loud. Excellent! Excellent! Long Fei Yi, old man didn't guess wrong. You will lose to a woman in the end. Bai Yanqing steeled his heart and decided to reveal his final trump card. He said, prepare the carriage. Old man wants to personally meet the D clan head, Ning Qing. He wanted to thank Long Fei Yi for revealing Ning Cheng's background. Otherwise, he wouldn't have known who to work with for such a perfect plan. Back then, it was the D clan who had funded and supported them from behind the scenes. They had joined forces with the Wind and Black clans to destroy the last of East Qin's imperial guards. He believed that this time, the three clans would work together happily as well. Bai Yanqing quickly set out for Tianning. He didn't know that Ning Qing was currently in Medical City, secretly meeting with Ning Jing. Ning Jing had just received news of the war as well and was so shocked that her face had turned white. She had always known that Long Fei Yi was Tianning's strongest enemy, but she didn't know that Long Fei Yi was the D clan's enemy as well. Big brother, why aren't you hurrying back yet? Long Fei Yi's mermaid soldiers don't just know how to cross rivers. There are two major water systems in South Shaonan Prefecture that we can't guard against. Ning Jing coaxed. Within half a month, Tianning's southern regions will be conquered. There's no use for your lordship to go back. Ning Qing was rather calm. Long Fei Yi's move was truly ingenious. He'd used revenge as an excuse to send out troops and even revealed the Ning clan's secret to the public. How much support did he win with this? The Great Qin Empire had opened up Cloud Realm Continent's only golden age. Eastern and Western Qin's imperial clan was still the most honorable and sacred bloodline in people's hearts. Previously, Western Qin's Chu clan had announced their identity as the Nether clan and waged war under the pretext of reviving Western Zhou. However, they hadn't received any support from the people and were instead denounced for using the name of Western Qin's imperial clan for personal gain. However, Long Fei Yi was different. Long Fei Yi was the legitimate heir of the imperial clan. It was perfectly justifiable for him to seek revenge and revive East Qin. Moreover, Long Fei Yi's own strength was extremely powerful. Ning Qing could already foresee that after Tianning's southern regions fell, there would definitely be forces from Western Zhou, Tianning, and Tian who would pledge allegiance to Long Fei Yi and serve East Qin wholeheartedly. Rather than submit first and be rewarded later, it was better to lose the war and become a prisoner. Big bro, are you just going to watch as Ning Jing knew how to make money, but not politics? Before she could finish, Ning Qing cut her off with a long sigh. If we can find the orphan of Western Qin's imperial clan, there's still a chance to turn things around. Otherwise, Northern Li will be in trouble. Long Fei Yi, it's no wonder he's East Qin's descendant. Big bro, are you giving up? Ning Jing shook her head. No. Ning Chang's lips curved into a cold, arrogant smile. There's one person who can stop Long Fei Yi's army from advancing. Han Yunxi. Ning Jing was very smart. Get the Tang clan's hidden weapons as soon as possible. You don't need to worry about anything else, Ning Qing said coldly. Understood. Ning Jing nodded. Ning Qing was about to leave when he turned around and asked, "Where's Tang Li?" He. Ning Jing's heart skipped a beat. I asked him to buy me food. I'm not used to the food in this inn. You don't have much time left, Ning Qing reminded her before leaving. Ning Jing hurriedly closed the door and let out a sigh of relief. In fact, Tang Li had disappeared a long time ago. She didn't know why she had lied to Ning Qing. Emperor Kongqing of Western Zhou, Long Tianma of Tianan, the emperors of the northern dynasties, and even the city lord of Carefree City, Elder Wang of Medicine City, and the disciples of Long Fei Yi were all stunned by Long Fei Ye's identity. The most shocked of all was Chu Tianyin, who was on the eastern border of Western Qin. He never imagined that the person he'd been working with for so long was actually the common enemy of the Fiend clan and the Western Qin imperial family, the East Qin dynasty. He firmly believed that Gu Beiyue had no idea. Otherwise, Gu Beiyue would never work with Long Fei Yi. He only felt that Gu Beiyue had been used by Long Fei Yi. He sent several letters to Gu Beiyue, but he didn't know that Gu Beiyue would no longer receive them. That night, Gu Beiyue and Mu Ling returned from the poison sect's forbidden grounds. As soon as he learned of Long Fei Ye's identity, Gu rushed to Han Yunxi's door and pounded on it. But when Han Yunxi opened the door, Gu's words were all stuck in his throat. Should he tell Han Yunxi about Mute Granny? How should he tell her? Long Fei Yi had lied about Mute Granny first, but he'd also lied to his poison lass. Would Long Fei Yi really be such a petty person? Would he be so despicable as to hide his identity and use Gu Beiyue? Gu had always been clear about his likes and dislikes, but this was the first time he'd hesitated. Did you find Gu Beiyue? Han Yunxi was only asking casually. She knew that if they'd found Gu Beiyue, Gu would have shouted all the way here. Gu was silent for a long time before he said gently, "No, I just came to see you. You're tired too. Go rest." Han Yunxi felt a little powerless. She was about to close the door when Luo Zuishan suddenly ran over and blocked it. "Esteemed Wang Fei, old man found out. The Duke of Qin isn't with the army. The one leading the troops is General Bailey." When the battle started last night, the Bailey army claimed that the Duke of Qin was personally in command, but no one saw him after daybreak. The Ning clan troops began to suspect that the Duke of Qin's identity is fake this afternoon, but the Bailey army still hasn't responded. Han Yunxi froze, then exclaimed, "You mean to say that Long Fei Yi isn't with the army?" Chapter 809. Yes. The Duke of Qin isn't with the army, Luo Zuishan was very certain. He didn't forget to shoot a look at Gu. But Gu remained silent with a gloomy face. Han Yunxi glanced at Chu Shifeng. Chu Shifeng and Su Donglin had been standing guard here all day without gathering any information, so how could they know so much? Esteemed Wang Fei, Medical City has eyes and ears everywhere. This news came from the front lines, it can't be wrong. Luo Zuishan said seriously. Everyone understood what Luo Zuishan meant. Since the Duke of Qin wasn't with the army, then Chu Shifeng's insistence that he wasn't present had been overturned. Chu Shifeng angrily grabbed Luo Zuishan by the collar. So what if the Duke of Qin isn't with the army? Can you be sure when His Highness left? How could His Highness abandon something as important as leading the army? How could it be possible to travel from Sand City to Medicine City in 1 or 2 days? Let go. Let go. Luo Zuishan tugged at Chu Shifeng's hand until he felt like he was going to choke him to death. In the end, Gu pressed down on Chu Shifeng's hand. Qi Shao, you can't be suspecting His Highness Duke of Qin as well, right? How could Chu Shifeng not know what Luo Zuishan was thinking? Luo Zuishan was trying to sow discord for the sake of Gu. Esteemed Wang Fei and His Highness Duke of Qin had almost fallen out because of Gu. Chu Shifeng looked down on petty people who took advantage of other people's difficulties, much less animals who bullied their brothers' wives. He stared straight into Gu's eyes with utter disdain. Gu wasn't someone Chu Shifeng could provoke. His gaze hardened as he grabbed Chu Shifeng's wrist and yanked it open, flinging him to the ground. Gu! Chu Shifeng raged. He wanted to rush over, but Gu raised a hand to play with a thorn seed between his fingers. Are you seeking death? He asked coldly. Gu, His Highness the Duke of Qin treats you. Chu Shifeng almost exposed Gu's cooperation with Long Fei Yi, but Gu cut him off harshly. This young gentleman isn't his hunting dog. How can I not suspect him when things are already like this? Are you an idiot? You! Chu Shifeng was furious. Unexpectedly, Gu changed the topic and said, suspicions are just suspicions, but who knows if the person last night was him. This young gentleman advises you to hurry up and find out just when Long Fei left the barracks. Shao Qi, can they be trusted? Luo Zuishan added. Gu slowly turned his head, his gaze sharp enough to kill. Luo Zuishan was frightened and finally shut his mouth in resentment. Following Luo Zuishan's silence, the large courtyard suddenly quieted down, to the point that the atmosphere became strange. Perhaps everyone had their own thoughts, but no one dared to voice their true thoughts except for Luo Zuishan. Gu's lips twitched. He wanted to smile at Han Yunxi, but couldn't bring himself to do so. Poison Lass, do you still trust them? He asked. Although the question was, do you still trust them? In the end, it was still, do you still trust Long Fei Yi? If she trusted Long Fei Yi, then she'd believe Chu Shifeng and Su Donglin's investigation results. If she didn't trust Long Fei Yi, then she'd be convinced that this was all a scam from beginning to end. Naturally, she wouldn't trust Chu Shifeng and the rest either. No matter how much the dark-robed man resembled Long Fei Yi, as long as they had proof that Long Fei Yi was in the army and not in Medical City, it was enough to prove that the man wasn't Long Fei Yi. Kenzo's martial arts had been crippled, and Celestial Mountain's honored elders couldn't leave the mountain to meddle in mortal affairs. Besides Long Fei Yi himself, he didn't have any experts at his disposal. Everyone looked at Han Yunxi and waited for her reply. Han Yunxi looked expressionlessly at Chu Shifeng. She was about to speak when Chu Shifeng hastily cut her off. Esteemed Wang Fei, this subordinate will go investigate right now. So speaking, he didn't give Han Yunxi a chance to speak, but dragged Su Donglin away with him. Perhaps even Chu Shifeng was afraid that esteemed Wang Fei would refuse, or that they wouldn't even have a chance to investigate. Just what was Han Yunxi's attitude? Seeing Chu Shifeng leave, she smiled helplessly, making it hard to read. Poison Lass, old fiend, hurry and find Gu Beiyue, won't you? Don't waste time. Besides her pleas, Han Yunxi didn't reveal any other emotions. Gu had never been able to figure out this woman, but this was the first time he felt that she was so difficult to approach. He wanted to know what she was thinking and enter her heart when she was at her weakest. Even if he didn't love her, at least he could comfort her. Unfortunately, he didn't even give her the chance. He would never forget how Han Yunxi had decisively trusted Long Fei Yi without a shred of doubt during the confrontation at Medicine Ghost Valley. He would never forget how much he'd hoped for the day when the truth of the lies at Medicine Ghost Valley would be revealed. Then he could point at Long Fei Yi's nose and curse Han Yunxi to his heart's content. He could throw caution to the wind and publicize his immortal body, then tear up his original agreement with Long Fei Yi. But he didn't want to, nor could he bear to, hurt her like this. She was already very upset. Poison lass, Chi brother, I don't know if you still trust Long Fei Yi. But Chi brother knows that you must be upset. Even he was angry that Long Fei Yi wasn't loyal enough to tell everyone first before announcing such shocking news to the world. What's more, Han Yunxi was Qin Wangfei. Gu nodded heavily. All right. I won't waste any time. Take care of yourself. Gu was about to leave when Han Yunxi asked again, Old ghost, is your body okay? Even though she and Gu Beiyue had resolved the crisis brought about by the northernly imperial physician, she and Gu Beiyue were both very clear about the abnormality in Gu's body. She had planned to ask Gu Beiyue about it last night, but she didn't have the chance to do so. Gu simply admired Han Yunxi. He really wanted to open Han Yunxi's head and see what was inside. How could this woman be so calm that she even remembered to care about the abnormality in his body? Gu smiled. It's okay, I won't die. He quickly turned and left. Other than Mu Ling, no one else saw the pain in his smile. Mu Ling, caught up with Gu and spread her arms in front of him with a serious expression. Chi brother, no matter what happens, Ling will always believe you. I will never doubt you. Gu didn't want to pay attention to her and walked around her. However, he looked back. Girl, if I lied to you, would you still believe me? Mu Ling nodded without hesitation. I would. Even if you sold me, I would still believe you. I'd be happy. Sometimes, believing wasn't a judgment, but a choice. Gu walked back with a frown and gently flicked Mu Ling's forehead. She's not like you. Chi brother, do you know what kind of woman Han Yunxi is? Mu Ling asked seriously. Gu was at a loss for words. Mu Ling muttered to herself, Chi brother, we're actually the same. It wasn't clear if Gu heard, but he hooked an arm around Mu Ling's shoulder. Why are you blabbering so much? How annoying. Go find him. This young master will find Gu Beiyue even if it means moving mountains and filling rivers. People who loved each other would always have their fingers interlocked and arms around each other's shoulders. They would always be good brothers and sisters. Even though Mu Ling was familiar with this logic, she still enjoyed it. After Gu left, Han Yunxi did something even calmer. She wrote a letter to the City of Daughters and called for the poison guards that she had picked out from the shadow guards to come over to protect her. At the same time, she also wrote a letter to the City of Daughters and called for a few female mercenaries who were highly skilled in martial arts to come over. Afterwards, she ordered people to bring over all the scrolls from the poison sect's forbidden grounds and shut herself in her room to read them. She didn't cry or make a fuss. She didn't even show any signs of anger, but was unusually calm and silent. Instead, her unusual silence made everyone's hearts hang in their throats. Han Yunxi, just what's wrong with you? Chu Shifeng personally sent a flying hawk message to Bailey Yuanlong before returning to the room to keep watch. Deep into the night, the lights in the room were still on, but he didn't feel sleepy at all. His eyes were wide open and his face was ashen. By daybreak, his face had turned ashen. Last night, he'd sent an urgent letter to His Highness Duke of Qin. If His Highness was near Sandy River, he would have seen it and replied long ago. But there was still no reply. That meant the letter had already been sent to the army. Chu Shifeng's heart clenched as he continued to wait. But from dawn to dusk, there was still no reply. He was truly afraid. Just where was His Highness Duke of Qin? How far was he from Sandy River? Why hadn't he received a reply yet? Finally, in the dead of night, 2 secret letters arrived at the same time. One was from His Highness Duke of Qin in light purple, while the other was from Bailey Yuanlong in black. The former was addressed to esteemed Wang Fei, while the latter was to Chu Shifeng. Chu Shifeng held the letters in his hands and hesitated. Su Donglin snatched the letter from Bailey Yuanlong's hands and tore it open. Both of them gaped at the contents. At this moment, Han Yunxi suddenly opened the door and saw the letters in Su Donglin and Chu Shifeng's hands. Her eyes gave a start at the sight of the light purple letter, but she quickly recovered her icy expression. She didn't speak, but reached out a hand. Chu Shifeng and Su Donglin obediently handed over the letters. She read the black letter and furrowed her brows. Esteemed Wang Fei, His Highness he, Su Donglin had no words to explain himself. Bailey Yuanlong's reply said that His Highness Duke of Qin hadn't personally led the expedition, but had secretly left the army for days. Han Yunxi tossed the black letter to Chu Shifeng and turned to enter the room. It wasn't until she shut the door that she realized the pinkish-purple letter in her hands had almost been crushed to pieces. She sniffled and placed the letter on the table, smoothing it out with great effort. Even when she received a blank letter, she still couldn't wait to open it, full of anticipation. But why was it so difficult to open this letter this time? It was clearly the most familiar letter, so why did it feel so unfamiliar? Long Fei Yi, just how much have I understood of you since our marriage? If it's an explanation, isn't this letter too late? Han Yunxi took a deep breath and opened the letter. It wasn't a long explanation like she expected, nor was it blank. Instead, there was only a single sentence. Chapter 8:10. Long Fei Ye's late letter only contained one sentence. Han Yunxi, do you still trust me? Her fingers gently brushed the ink. The ink was no longer warm, but it still emitted a faint ink fragrance. In fact, she rarely saw his handwriting, but she remembered it very clearly. This handwriting was vigorous and powerful, domineering and unrestrained, revealing his aura. It was said that the handwriting reflected the person, but she couldn't tell how he felt when he wrote these words. The romantic pinkish-purple color coupled with his vigorous handwriting made it seem like her tenderness and his iron-bloodedness blended together. They seemed to be closely integrated into each other, yet they seemed to have formed their own worlds, mutually contradictory and unable to become one. Han Yunxi, do you still trust me? She stroked the letter again and again. Finally, as usual, she carefully folded the letter neatly, put it in an envelope, and hid it close to her clothes. Then, as usual, she wrote back to him, but this time, it wasn't Long Fei Yi, I miss you. Instead, it was an empty letter. When Long Fei Yi received Han Yunxi's letter, he was on his way to Medical City. He had already been on the road for 2 days and 2 nights, so he had to rest tonight. Otherwise, the horses and Uncle Gao wouldn't be able to take it. He leaned against the carriage as he read the letter. He was still dressed in black, exuding an irresistible sense of nobility and mystery in the night. He lowered his head slightly, his drooping brows appearing slightly cold. The curve of his face appeared even more handsome and cold in the night. He quietly read the letter, forming a world of his own. A cold and lonely world. It was clearly a blank piece of paper, but he stared at it for a very long time. Bailey Mingxiang, Uncle Gao, and the shadow guard Ah Dong were resting on the side, but their gazes all fell on the letter in His Highness Duke of Qin's hand. If His Highness Duke of Qin was able to stare at it for so long, it had to be esteemed Wang Fei's letter. But wasn't His Highness Duke of Qin reading it for too long this time? They also didn't know the truth behind Gu Beiyue's death. Bailey Mingxiang's mind kept replaying the words she had heard before. She was a woman of few words, and these days, she had been even more silent. Uncle Gao gave Bailey Mingxiang a look. Bailey Mingxiang shook his head and didn't dare to go over. In the end, Uncle Gao went over by himself. Your Highness, it's getting late. Get some rest. Your health is more important. Over the past few days, His Highness had been busy dealing with secret letters from various places and had no time to rest. Once the identity of the East Qin imperial clan was announced, it would signify the beginning of His Highness Duke of Qin's conquest of the world. The Bailey army had already taken Tianing South Shaonan Prefecture. All of the aristocratic families of the south-central regions had unanimously expressed their support for His Highness Duke of Qin and their willingness to serve the East Qin imperial clan. Meanwhile, Western Zhou, Tianan, and even some of Tianing's separatist factions all sent secret letters to express their willingness to surrender and serve the East Qin imperial clan. The situation was great. His Highness Duke of Qin was supposed to stay in the army for a long time, but he left everything behind to travel in secret. If Consort Wan was still alive, she'd probably be angered to death. If Tang Zijin found out about this, he'd definitely release Andrew and chase after him. Long Feiyi recovered his wits and put away the empty letter by his chest. Coldly, he asked, "You're still not going to rest?" Uncle Gao was overwhelmed by the favor and didn't know how to reply. Unexpectedly, Long Feiyi continued, "If you're not going to rest, then we'll continue on our way. We'll reach Medical City in 3 days, then you can go back to the Tang clan to retire." Uncle Gao wanted to cry, but no tears came out. It would take at least 4 days to reach Medical City from here. If they had to get there in 3 days, they'd probably have to stay up all night again. His Highness Duke of Qin was clearly in a bad mood, so how could he dare complain? He called for Bailey Mingxiang and the others before continuing on their way. Bailey Mingxiang was still sitting by Uncle Gao's side. Not only did she recall the words His Highness Duke of Qin had said to the Shadow Guard, but she also recalled the phoenix birthmark on esteemed Wang Fei's back. She was already certain that esteemed Wang Fei still didn't know that she was the orphan of the Western Qin imperial family. Could it be that Gu Beiyue had discovered esteemed Wang Fei's and His Highness Duke of Qin's origins, so he had a conflict with them and was killed? Could it be that Gu Beiyue didn't know about esteemed Wang Fei's origins, nor did he know about His Highness Duke of Qin's? Could it be that His Highness Duke of Qin used Gu Beiyue to seize Medical City before making the first move? Or could it be that Gu Beiyue didn't know esteemed Wang Fei's origins and discovered that His Highness Duke of Qin was from East Qin, so Gu Beiyue wanted to avenge the Western Qin imperial family and got into a conflict with His Highness Duke of Qin, so he was killed? Then what about His Highness Duke of Qin? Did he know the significance of the phoenix birthmark? Did he know esteemed Wang Fei's origins? Did he really dote on esteemed Wang Fei? Bailey Mingxiang considered all the possibilities. In any case, the Shadow Clan and East Qin were irreconcilable enemies. There was no way to resolve their grudges. His Highness Duke of Qin's motive for killing Gu Beiyue was all too obvious. Bailey Mingxiang began to miss esteemed Wang Fei. He was about to rush down the mountain when Lady Tang stopped him. "Where are you going?" Lady Tang's face was ashen white as well. "Where am I going?" He. Tang Zijin laughed coldly. Iru already had her suspicions when she overheard about the Shadow Clan, but I never expected Han Yunxi to really be a descendant of Western Qin. We didn't have any proof before, but now that we've been exposed, I'm going to ask Fei how he's going to deal with that woman. Lady Tang gave him a shove and said coldly, with Fei's shrewdness, how could he not know? Would he really allow a woman of dubious origins to stay by his side? Her words woke Tang Zijin up, causing him to calm down. "You mean to say, Fei, he was hiding things on purpose?" Lady Tang sighed. "Most likely. Didn't Li write a letter yesterday about Gu Beiyue? As I see it, Fei must have killed Gu Beiyue to silence him. Nonsense. The ancestors of Western Qin's imperial clan and our Tang clan will never allow him to do such a preposterous thing. Tang Zijin raged as he turned to head for the back of the mountain. Where are you going now? Lady Tang chased after him. Tang Zijin didn't even look back as he sped up. To find Iru. It wasn't just Tang Zijin who was furious, but Bailey Yuanlong as well. When he learned that Han Yunshi was a descendant of Western Qin's imperial clan, he couldn't contain his rage. He immediately wrote a letter urging His Highness Duke of Qin to kill her as soon as possible. First, it would prevent future troubles, and second, it would appease the East Qin soldiers. How many innocent Bai clan members had been sacrificed in the war between Eastern and Western Qin? How many families had been destroyed and homeless? How many had hidden their identities and never seen the light of day? All of this had been caused by Western Qin's imperial clan. When the old man from Kenzhou heard the news, his first reaction was, Han Yunshi is a descendant of Western Qin. Fei was actually tricked by a woman. Before the first wave had even subsided, another wave rose as all of Cloud Realm continent boiled over. Some said that His Highness Duke of Qin had been tricked by Han Yunshi, while others claimed that he'd long known of Han Yunshi's identity and used it to hurt her on purpose. Still others claimed that they didn't know each other's identities at all. Now that they knew, they'd definitely turn into enemies. Still, no one bothered to find out who spread the news. In the medical academy, Han Yunshi sat up and down in her rooms, feeling unwell all over. She suddenly thought of Mute Granny. That Mute Granny of the Mu clan. Ever since she found out about her origins in the poison sect, she'd never suspected that she was a descendant of Western Qin's imperial clan. How could she have known that Lady Tianqin was not only a daughter of the Mu clan, but a descendant of Western Qin's imperial clan as well? Even after Gu Beiyue's identity as a member of the Shadow Clan was exposed, she didn't suspect anything. When Chu Shifeng told her that Gu Beiyue was the only remaining member of the Shadow Clan and that Gu Beiyue only wanted to live a peaceful life, she believed him. Back then, she even thought that if she was a descendant of Western Qin's imperial clan, then Gu Beiyue had no reason to hide it from her. Thus, she believed Chu Shifeng's words. But now, what about Long Feiyi? How much did he know about Long Feiyi? Han Yunshi pressed her hands against the table as she panted for breath. She did her best to think back to everything she knew about Mute Granny. She recalled how Mu Ling had cursed and berated her when she'd blocked her carriage. Mu Ling had accused her and Long Feiyi of killing Mute Granny. Han Yunshi took multiple deep breaths, but couldn't calm down. She couldn't think of anything. She had to find Mu Ling, but as soon as she opened the door, she saw Chu Shifeng, Su Donglin, and a group of shadow guard blocking her way. She ignored them, but Su Donglin stopped her. Esteemed Wang Fei, you can't go anywhere. Who gave you the right to restrict me? Han Yunshi demanded. Long Feiyi. But Chu Shifeng's tone was cold. No. Chu Shifeng, what does he mean? Chu Shifeng's ancestors had almost been exterminated by the Western Qin imperial clan during the war between Eastern and Western Qin. Chapter 811. Han Yunshi was such a sharp person. Cold as she scrutinized Chu Shifeng, she could smell the scent of hatred. It was precisely this taste of hatred that was like a basin of cold water pouring down from the top of her head, drenching her thoroughly. It also made her completely calm down from her chaotic thoughts. Long Feiyi was the East Qin crown prince, while she was the orphan of Western Qin. Eastern and Western Qin had irreconcilable enmity between them. Actually, she wasn't the real Han Yunshi, so she couldn't sense any hatred. But Long Fei-yi was different. Long Fei-yi had known since he was a child that he wasn't the real Tianning imperial prince. Moreover, his imperial mother had long been cultivating beauty's blood in hopes of breaking through the perplexing butterfly illusion and taking over the world. All of this proved that Long Fei-yi had been shouldering the heavy responsibility of avenging his country since he was a child. All of his years of hard work had been for the sake of hoisting the East Qin banner and conquering the world one day. Most of his most loyal subordinates who knew his background like the back of their hands were most likely loyal to the East Qin imperial family. Whether it was the Bailey army, the Shadow Guard, or the Tang clan. It'd be strange if Chu Shifeng didn't hate her. Although Han Yunxi couldn't sense West Qin's hatred towards East Qin, she could understand the feelings of national enmity and family hatred. She too cherished her motherland and hated all those invaders, plunderers, and murderers throughout history. Seeing the enmity in Chu Shifeng's eyes, Han Yunxi's head was filled with thoughts. All she cared about was the truth. Did Long Fei-yi know about her identity long ago? That was why she was in such a rush to find Mu Ling. Long Fei-yi had been investigating her identity all this time. He'd found out about Lady Mu Axian from the Mu clan in Medicine City. Today's news from Dragon Sky Continent had mentioned the Mu clan's Mu Axian and confirmed that she was a descendant of Western Qin's imperial clan. This coincidence, combined with Mu Ling's accusation of blocking the carriage, made it hard for her not to think of Mute Granny. Mute Granny was definitely the one who knew the truth the best. If Long Fei-yi had known about her identity, he could have easily shut Mute Granny's mouth to hide it from her. If that was really the case, what was Long Fei-yi's intention towards her? What was the purpose of Long Fei-yi cooperating with Gu Beiyue? There was also another possibility. Mute Granny's case had nothing to do with Long Fei-yi. Long Fei-yi also didn't know about her past. However, this possibility also made Han Yunxi feel even more helpless and desperate. How could the East Qin crown prince fall in love with a descendant of the Western Qin royal family? Was Long Fei-yi regretting at this moment, regretting that he had taken the initiative to come to her? What was the truth? She hated doubts and suspicions. She only wanted the truth. Whether it was hurt, anger, hatred, resentment, or willingness to love to the end, they all needed the truth. Only after knowing the truth would they have a choice. Otherwise, she'd be led around like an idiot. She hated this feeling. This was her last chance to calm down. Long Fei-yi, Long Fei-yi. At least, you know who you are. But what about me? Han Yunxi thought of Gu Beiyue, the descendant of the Shadow clan and Western Qin's most loyal supporter. Gu Beiyue, how much do you know? How much have you lied to me? Chu Shifeng, are you planning to rebel against your superiors? Han Yunxi sounded like she was questioning him, but she was actually probing him. Rebel? Western Qin spawn, you're not worthy. Chu Shifeng gave a cold snort. Not long ago, he'd been trying to explain things to her in a submissive tone, afraid that she'd misunderstand Long Fei-yi. But now his attitude had changed 180 degrees. How much did he hate the Western Qin royal family? I want to see Long Fei-yi. Where is he? Han Yunxi said cold. Don't worry, His Highness will definitely come to see you one last time. Chu Shifeng said cold. Long Fei-yi. Long Fei-yi knew about my identity long ago. He's been lying to me this entire time. Han Yunxi suppressed her anger as she probed again. Chu Shifeng hesitated, but still insisted, yes. Han Yunxi couldn't restrain her anger. She turned to enter the room and slammed the door shut. She paced back and forth in the room, unsure of how much longer she could hold out. Outside, Su Donglin asked in a low voice, Boss, how could you do this? You lie to esteemed Wang Fei. Actually, they'd been stunned when they heard the news as well. They had no idea whether His Highness Duke of Qin had known about esteemed Wang Fei's identity long ago. I didn't lie to her. His Highness must have known everything long ago. Otherwise, why would he work with Gu Beiyue? If His Highness isn't in the army, then he must be in Medical City. Chu Shifeng replied. As he saw it, His Highness was only working with Gu Beiyue to use Gu Beiyue. How could His Highness Duke of Qin ever rely on or value a member of the Shadow Clan? He was simply inviting a wolf into the house. Actually, he'd always harbored suspicions about His Highness Duke of Qin after Gu Beiyue's assassination attempt, but he never dared to voice his suspicions. Moreover, as a subordinate, he had to do his best to persuade his mistress. But things were different now. Han Yunxi's identity perfectly explained His Highness Duke of Qin's strange behavior. Now he was certain that the dark-robed assassin was His Highness. His Highness must have known about Han Yunxi's identity long ago. He must have hidden his identity to assassinate Gu Beiyue because he wanted to keep using Han Yunxi. Unfortunately, Han Yunxi happened to see him that night. Su Donglin shook his head. He didn't agree with Chu Shifeng's guesses. Boss, if that's the case, why did His Highness hide it from you? Why hasn't he shown himself yet? It was normal for His Highness Duke of Qin to hide the fact that Chu Shifeng was the head of the Shadow Guard, but he shouldn't have hidden it from Chu Shifeng. Chu Shifeng was clearly using his position to avenge a personal grudge. Chu Shifeng grew angry from embarrassment and gave a cold snort. No matter what, she's our East Qin's enemy. And His Highness's enemy. Perhaps she knew everything long ago and snuck into His Highness's side. Don't forget, she was the one who showed up at the wedding herself. Boss, don't act rashly. Let's wait for His Highness's reply before we discuss it. Su Donglin murmured. Although he was shocked by esteemed Wang Fei's identity, he still remembered how well she treated the Shadow Guard. Inside the room, Han Yunxi was staring blankly at the pinkish-purple letter. Han Yunxi, do you still believe it? She muttered to herself. Long Fei Yi, what should I believe in you? She'd replied to his empty letter because she wanted to imitate his previous one. She was telling him that her feelings for him were the same as his feelings for her. On the night of Gu Beiyue's assassination, Lil Thing had bitten the dark-robed assassin's shoulder. Although Lil Thing's fangs hadn't recovered yet, she'd long smeared blood at dawn on Lil Thing's fangs before coming to Medical City. She hoped it'd be an extra helper in times of danger. It would only take one night for blood at dawn to take effect. Blood at dawn was a new poison from the poison pond. It was very similar to throat sealing at dawn, a commonly used poison in the poison world. It was impossible to tell the difference without careful examination. But there was a world of difference between their antidotes. There was only one antidote for blood at dawn, and it was in her hands. On the other hand, the antidote for throat sealing at dawn was very easy to buy. If the dark-robed assassin was Long Fei Yi, he'd quickly discover that the antidote for throat sealing at dawn was ineffective. If he didn't come to her for the antidote, he'd definitely die. If the dark-robed assassin wasn't Long Fei Yi, he'd definitely come to her door to ask for the antidote. Who wasn't afraid of death? The assassin had remained silent until now. No matter how powerful an expert was, it was impossible to detoxify this new type of poison in a single night. Moreover, she'd paid attention to the dark-robed assassin's shoulder that night and hadn't noticed any signs of poisoning. Han Yunxi had long suspected who the assassin was and how he'd managed to detoxify the poison in an instant. She was also certain that the culprit had used Celestial Mountain swordsmanship techniques to exploit Gu Beiyue's death and sow discord between her and Long Fei Yi. She hadn't said anything because she wanted to beat Long Fei Yi at his own game and lure the snake out of its hole. Secondly, she was still angry at Long Fei-yi. She couldn't accept the fact that Long Fei-yi hadn't told his wife a single thing before announcing his identity to the public. She'd been waiting for him to give her an explanation this entire time. But who knew that she'd received such terrifying news instead? She was actually a descendant of Western Qin's imperial clan. She dearly wished that the news was fake, but how could anyone else know about the phoenix birthmark on her back? Someone must have found out about her identity and confirmed that she had a birthmark on her back. She forced herself to stay calm and collected as she waited for the truth. Chu Shifeng's words had given her the answer she wanted. If her identity hadn't been exposed, would Chu Shifeng and Su Donglin have continued to help Long Fei-yi explain things and help Long Fei-yi keep up the act? Even if it wasn't Long Fei-yi who tried to assassinate Gu Beiyue, as the East Qin crown prince, Long Fei-yi had deceived Gu Beiyue and her. What kind of good intentions did he have? If he wasn't using her, then what was he? She'd once stood by the window of Leisurely Cloud Pavilion and imagined countless times what kind of woman he'd treat with sincerity and tenderness like water. She'd even believed that lucky woman was herself. But in the end, it was all just a show of using her. What a fool. Was it fated that the princess of Western Qin would never be treated with sincerity by him? Han Yunxi gently lifted her sleeve and looked at the cinnabar mark on her arm. She seemed to understand something and smiled bitterly. After being married for 4 years, this cinnabar mark was probably his true feelings for her. He'd rejected her with all his heart. Her heart was about to break, but Han Yunxi didn't cry. She didn't complain, but only felt bitter and self-mocking. Even when it came to love, she was still stubborn and strong in her bones. She stuffed the pink letter under the teapot and went to open the door, only to find it locked from the outside. Chu Shifeng, open the door. Chu Shifeng. There was clearly someone outside the door, but no one answered her no matter how hard she knocked. So be it. She'd wait. Even if she'd been deceived and used, she still had a question to ask Long Fei-yi face to face. She wanted to know everything. Even if my world is about to collapse, I'll wait until I get his answer. Then it'll collapse completely and be destroyed. Actually, the hardest thing to endure wasn't falling apart, but being rational. Sometimes, falling apart was a form of release. Han Yunxi didn't cry or make a fuss. Sitting quietly in her room and waiting was the greatest torment of her life. She was just this kind of woman. Even in desperate straits, she could keep her cool. If such a woman really collapsed one day, what kind of scene would it be? Han Yunxi was waiting for Long Fei-yi, while Chu Shifeng was waiting for Long Fei-yi. Luo Zuishan was burning with anxiety as he tried to find a way to hire people, hoping to find a high-level expert to avoid the shadow guard on the cliff and enter the abyss to tell Gu and Mu Ling, everything. Gu and Mu Ling, were in the abyss, not daring to waste a second in their search. They had no idea how much of Cloud Realm continent had boiled over. When night fell, the sound of firecrackers rose from outside the medical academy. Very soon, beautiful fireworks bloomed in the air, making it impossible to tell who was celebrating. Chu Shifeng and Su Donglin sat by the door in silence. Both of them were very disappointed. They had no idea that the sound of the fireworks had been heard. They didn't know that someone had lifted the roof tiles and snuck into the room. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.